Good day, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for being here. So that was Mumford and Sons, and I've played them before, way back, but there's so many songs of theirs that are just so full of goodness that I just love them so very much. So I had to bring them back on again and play some more for y'all. So as we do, let's go through the lyrics here and see what we see. So let's see here. Sigh no more. Serve God, love me, and mend. This is not the end. Live unbruised, we are friends, and I'm sorry, I'm sorry. So, sigh no more. So what's a sigh? It's like an exhalation. It's like exasperation. You know, we sigh when we are overwhelmed, or so what's the opposite of that is like that inhalation, you know, receiving that breath. So we're shifting, sighing no more. We're shifting to that inhalation. So serve God, love me, and mend. This is not the end. Live unbruised. We are friends, and I'm sorry. So it's kind of, just examining the fallen state and what we have gotten ourselves into. But this is not the end. So the repentance, I'm sorry. Sigh no more. 1 foot in sea, 1 on shore. So this is a powerful line because the sea is the feminine, the shore is the masculine, and we are right here in the balance. So acknowledging this union point between these two seemingly opposite realities. My heart was never pure. So, again, just sort of this cleansing process of acknowledging the self and what we've fallen into. And then it changes, or it notices, but man is a giddy thing. So this experience we're having is, we could call it a giddy thing, you know, because I can't help but laugh at times, just admiring this experience and what we've done, because we've chosen to create an experience where we forgot who we are, all to remember again. And all the struggles and challenges and things along the way they're very purposeful and helpful to expand this experience. And so giddy thing is one way to describe it. Love, it will not betray you. Dismay or enslave you, it will set you free. Be more like the man you are made to be. So this calling of love, or this reunion with love, knowing that it will not betray us, dismay us, enslave us, it will set us free. So if we feel any of these things, we know we are moving away from love, because love does not do those things. Be more like the man you are made to be, made in God's image, made in that goodness image as a fractalized aspect of the Creator. You are that. No separate, nothing separate. There is a design, an alignment, a cry of my heart to see the beauty of love as it was made to be. So falling in and out of love, this experience of how when there's just one is the loneliest number that you'll ever do. And 2 can be as bad as 1. But that's what we did. We wanted to experience or enhance our expression of love, even though that's what we are. But the only way to really expand in that is to fall out of it and to reunite with it again. So we've gone on this long, continuous journey of falling in and out of love. And every time we reunite with it, it's the most magical, wonderful experience. And we swell up and expand and grow. And then somewhere along the way, there's a catalyst so that we can go through a fall. And that leads to a greater expansion of that experience of love. Distance makes the heart grow fonder. So remembering there is a design and alignment, a cry of my heart to see the beauty of love as it was made to be. So remembering our purpose here, if you will, or that life mission of always seeking love, remembering that we are love and love is everywhere, even when we try and forget it. So it repeats, love it will not betray you, dismay, or enslave you. It will set you free. Be more like the man you are made to be, the man or woman you're made to be. It repeats again and just, repeats those beautiful lines so that it's emphasized and very clear. So what a beautiful song that is, Sigh No More. And then the next one, Roll Away Your Stone. So roll away your stone, or roll away mine. What's the stone? The stone being the fornix, this flap of skin within our brain that actually lifts up when our pineal is activated, sends a beam of light to our optic thalamus, which is what illuminates. So the deepest, darkest, most innermost sanctum, the cave within, becomes illuminated when this stone rolls away. So this is the invitation for that. Roll away your stone. Let's go deep into meditation. Let's go into the self. Let's fully express within ourselves. Together we can see what we will find. Don't leave me alone at this time, for I'm afraid of what I will discover inside. It's can be a intimidating process to go deeper within, stepping off into the unknown within. So we could view this as if he's speaking to a lover. Don't leave me alone at this time, or perhaps to the Christ, or to the feminine essence. So don't leave me alone at this time, for I'm afraid of what I will discover inside. But it is inside, so it makes a point to illustrate that. Because you told me that I would find a hole within the fragile substance of my soul. And I have filled this void with things unreal, and all the while my character it steals. So this hole or this void and it points out the character, and all the while my character it steals. So the character is the identity, the ego, the persona, the necessary part of us that gives us our unique characteristics and attributes and all the wonderful things that make this experience so exciting. However, when that character or that persona, that identity, that ego, when it's in charge, it's insatiable. It never feels fulfilled. So it's always looking to fill things, because it doesn't actually have true connection to the divine except through us, because it's a part of us, but it's on that end of the spectrum that's accentuating the separate experience. But the separate experience is merely that. It is just an experience. We are connected. And so in order for, if the character, the persona, if it's in charge, it's trying to fill the void, or this feeling that it has of not being connected, this feeling of separation with material things, with status, with attachments to relationships, and whatever you name it, that's the void that's trying to be filled by the character. So this line is just examining that. Darkness is a harsh term, don't you think? And yet it dominates the things I see. So darkness is a harsh term, don't you think? I like this line because it's oftentimes we demonize the darkness, and we act like it's got to be killed and vanquished, and when in reality the name of the game is integration and recognition that the darkness is a part of you and me. So darkness is a harsh term, don't you think? But it is, and yet it dominates the things I see. So in order to integrate or heal, become whole. Not that we aren't whole, but we pretend that we're not and forget that we're pretending that we're not. So this darkness is that the shadow or the unconscious. So bringing awareness to that, shining light in that space, and then integrating with it. So it dominates in that sort of fallen state. It seems that all my bridges have been burnt, but you say that's exactly how this grace thing works. So all my bridges, and we can look at this from a in-person relationships, external relationships, all the bridges have been burnt through our actions. Or we could say this is the bridge, or the bridges between the head and the heart, or the bridges between the left and the right hemisphere. But you say, so it seems that we've fallen into this separation, but you say that's exactly how this grace thing works. Falling in and out of love again. We have to fall into it in order to rekindle it and strengthen it. So that's exactly how this grace thing works. And it's not the long walk home that will change this heart. So God is not punishing us, sending us off into this separate experience, or sending us to hell so that we can, ruminate in our sins and all of that. It's not that. But the welcome I receive with a restart. So as soon as we signal that we're ready to restart, to renew ourselves, the rebirth, we go through that death, that recognition, the willingness to let go and surrender. And as soon as we do, there's no punishment. It's merely a joyous reunion. The prodigal son has returned. So that's what will change this heart. That's what reignites the heart, is knowing that. So, and then it continues. Darkness is a harsh term, don't you think? And yet it dominates the things I see. Stars, hide your fires. These here are my desires, and I will give them up to you this time around. So God gave us free will so that we would give it back. And it's not really giving up free will. It's just aligning with your highest will, right? Because God's will is your highest will. You are not separate from that, though we pretend to at times, and we let the persona steer us away from our highest will, and we can think it might be our highest will, because the mind can be captured by the ego. However, our highest will is always going to be towards that space of alignment. So these here are my desires, and I will give them up to you this time around. So I'm not going to let the temptations of the flesh, the bodily pleasures, the mental steerings, all these ways that we can fall into this further. So this is a recommitment, and I will give them up to you this time around. And so I'll be found with my stake stuck in this ground, marking the territory of this newly impassioned soul. So that's the rebirth, the recommitment, as I mentioned, with my stake stuck in the ground, stake stuck, SS, Kundalini, perhaps, the twin serpents, but stake stuck in this ground, grounded, and the stake representing that alignment, that posture, the post you are stuck in the ground, pointing directly up, aligning ourselves back to the Father. Hide your fires. Yeah, it repeats here. Just repeating that again. But you've gone too far this time. So I see these lines as perhaps it's speaking to the persona or the ego. But you've gone, because it's like, but you've gone too far this time. So it's like changing who it's addressing. You have neither reason nor rhyme with which to take the soul that is so rightfully mine. So reclaiming our full self from the persona, from the ego, from the character, and stepping back into our divinity. So yeah, that's those are those two songs by Mumford and Sons. Sigh no more and roll away your stone. Hope you enjoyed that. And welcome again to another episode of Quest-i-on, the quest to illuminate the single eye, the quest I am on, the quest we're all on, journeying back to self, back home. It's not anywhere physical. We don't have to go anywhere. It's simply remembering who we truly are. And once we start to remember that, then it's the practice is maintaining that in all moments, and maintaining that nobody or nothing that you look at or see or interact with is in any way separate from you. So it shifts all of our relations to this creation, and acknowledging that. So that's the path we're on, and illuminating that single eye is recognition of that. So this is an opportunity for us to gather and to ask questions and share our experiences and go over anything in particular that has stood out to us, or we just want some more clarification on, or perhaps we want to share some insight that we've discovered. So it's an open discussion. Any topics are always welcome, and anyone is welcome to chime in. So if you have anything that you'd like to speak on, a question you want to ask, or a topic you want to help cover, feel free to tune in or to chime in. And if you are if you're new to Telegram or haven't done it before, it's just hitting that center button on your screen to signal to me to open up your mic, and I'll get that opened up so that you can speak. And if your mic's already open, just wait for an opportune moment, a silent moment to speak. And if you have a hard time doing that, just sort of toggle your mic on and off, and I'll do my best to see it. And we'll get you in there for sure. So yeah, it's happy equinox, everyone. I hope people are enjoying this seasonal change, the rise of Aries, the start of the astrological new year, the true new year, as I like to view it. So this is a much more fitting time to celebrate New Year, as we start to see at least in the center sphere, or the center circle, if you will, what is often called the Northern Hemisphere, and from a globular perspective, we are entering into spring. In the outer, it's going to be shifting into fall. So a little bit different energetically, but still important to recognize the seasonal shift either which way. And the seasonal shift is great to align ourselves, because as above, so below, we are all connected. Everything is connected. And so when there's a seasonal change in the external, it means that energy is going to be aligning for a seasonal change within us as well. So these are great times to shift things and to take on either new practices or let go of old ways or things that are no longer serving us. And this can be done in a myriad of ways. I've been doing over a week now of all raw fruit and greens, just to do a cleanse. And then starting tomorrow, I'm going to be going into a fast, doing a little bit of a digital detox, getting off all my devices and just being with the self for, I'm telling myself at least 3 days, but I'm going to let it go as long as it feels right. So just a heads up, I don't know about the shows next week, and the watch party, I'm not going to be doing the watch party tomorrow as I normally do on Fridays. So that show is canceled, or moved to next week or whenever. And I'll let everybody know when I hop back online, but it might be a little bit before I start doing shows again. So we'll just see, or it could be short. Who knows? I'm not really putting a hard and fast number on it, but just wanted to give a heads up there. And yeah, just some announcements. Otherwise, just want to remind everyone that I am 100% donation supported to do all that I do. So thank you to all who have helped and contribute to that, either financially or in other ways. If you'd like to help financially, these are my contribution links, all on my website, justincarpenter.org/contribute. Very easy ways to send stuff to me. If you have trouble using any of these, let me know, and I'm sure we can find some other way. But I really appreciate all the support there. It means so much to me to help do what I do. So thank you. And if you'd like to contribute in other ways, there are plenty of ways to chip in to help out with all the efforts that go in here. There's writing notes and timestamps for these shows. Donna Dika has been doing such a phenomenal job at these shows in writing really, really detailed stuff. I mean, she uses AI to kind of help get the most out of it. But the amount of effort that she puts in to edit and organize and put all that together, it's tremendous. So very grateful for that. Make sure to give her channel a follow. Rabbit Trails and Bunny Tails, I believe is the name of it. And yeah, so thank you, Donna Dika, for that. So if you'd like to help out her any which way, or if you just want to take any of these other shows that don't have notes to them. So I'll show you an example. I think I just added these. Rabbit Trails and Bunny Tails. Yeah, that was right. So yeah, so here's an example of the notes that she writes, which is just phenomenal. But if you go onto any of these, so justincarpenter.org/post is where you can see all the posts. And if any of the shows do not have notes with them, it's always appreciated. So like the show I did with Lila on last Saturday, on spiritual bypassing, which was excellent. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it, I've had wonderful feedback on that. So thank you to all who have listened and given feedback on that. It was a really great conversation and very helpful for me just to even talk about these things and to go over. But yeah, so that's an example of a show that you could do notes or timestamps for. Creating little clips from these longer shows is also very appreciated as well. So those are just some ways that you can help out. And if you're curious for other ways, just let me know, and I can probably think of something. So thank you to all the efforts there. And if you like the music from these shows, I've been compiling all the songs into a YouTube playlist, which you can find. I link that on every single post for these shows. You can find the YouTube playlist here. But then there's also, thanks to Joanna MB of Passion for Fruit, who's her channel is phenomenal. So another like really great channel to follow. She's done a lot of shorter clips and things from shows, and she pulls a lot of great information from other sources and spaces too. So I always appreciate checking in with what she's up to. But she's been putting all the songs on a Spotify playlist, which is just so helpful, especially for me, because I love using Spotify. And so to be able to, whenever I go on, I'm driving or whatever, and I just want to put on some music and I don't really want to think about what I'm selecting, that's a great playlist that I love to jump back to, because they're all my favorite songs, and they all have very deep, meaningful lyrics. So having that essence imbued into my day, those energetics, those frequencies in my space is so appreciated. So thank you, Joanna, for the efforts there and putting that together. And then just wanted to mention as well that I am certainly still supporting the children in Uganda over in the care of Bali, the Lions of Uganda. They are still, just doing their best to get by with whatever they can to help get food and their basic needs met. So I'm working to help get them support as best I can. Any help with that is greatly appreciated. I've set this Gifts and Go up for them that I'll send directly to them. If you have trouble with that, feel free to contribute or send donations through any of the links that I've listed on my page, and just write a note and I'll happily forward it along to them. They're always so appreciative when they get support in that way. And yeah, I know it's tough. I know it's not easy for a lot of us in these times, but I just have to keep doing my best to get support to those who need it. And so appreciate that. Yeah, so I think that's it for the announcements today. So we'll just jump right into the show. And I do love to give priority to those who are here live on the show, just because it's fun to have a dynamic discussion, to go back and forth. And so we'll start there. But I do have offline questions to go to as well. And you're always welcome to send me questions at any point. So that's reaching out to me any which way that you can message me, or just writing in the comments on any post, and I'll do my best to find it. If I do forget your question, if there's been maybe a few shows and you haven't heard your question addressed, just remind me. You know, I'm just one guy. I don't have a team or anything, so I do my best to stay organized, but I make mistakes. So thanks for anyone who does remind me of those. And yeah. So we'll just get into. Yeah, we'll just get into it. So I'll pause here and see if anybody wants to jump in to start us off with any topic. All right, we'll go. Oh wait, here we go. Hey, Rowan, go ahead, brother.
Hey, Justin, glad to be on the show again. And just following up with, I think, a subject we were briefly discussing, a little bit about the Pi network and all that stuff. I checked it out. It's quite cool. I've started mining and just been learning more about the whole blockchain subject and how it works and what it's supposed to do, and remove power from centralized banks. And it's interesting because as I joined a Telegram group for Pi and stuff, and I kept learning, one of these other coins that, well, I'll try not to get too namey and name drop all these different things. It'll get too long-tailed. But basically, there's all these centralized bank stable coins, or yeah, those I'm sure you've heard about. And what I'm trying to learn more about is how to identify what is a stable coin when some of them, just say that they are, like one's backed up by the US dollar, USD, C, or this or that. And it's ironic because the whole point of these alternate currencies or cryptocurrencies is to take power away from these evil ones who have been manipulating our lives and generations before we were born, right? So some of these coins appear as what would not be a stable coin or a central bank cryptocurrency coin, but they could become stable coins in the future. And as we know, with all this mark of the beast, vaccine ID, this, that, digital ID stuff, where they would control our ability to spend money on particular things, like that bullshit when it comes to CO2 carbon tax credits or something. And if you go over it or you want to spend more on certain items, you have to basically pay your way to play. And I know we're still dealing with that right now. You pay to play with a lot of things. But yeah, I want to get more into this space, and, silver and gold and legitimate backing up of money is always what makes more sense. But I'm, just exploring options, and I'm sure lots of us have done our own research, but it's hard to tell who to really listen to, because right now it's all just opinions, it seems. Because I've put not, as much time as maybe you have or others have into this so far, but I'm picking up on that. It's very hard to tell which coins are actually going to be the ones that ensure freedom throughout the harder times that we know are coming. There's going to be some pretty crazy and interesting things playing out, as it's hard to remind myself to believe that this is all white hat stuff. And it's I don't even know how to describe some of these thoughts that I'm having. It's just, this is where I've led up to, and I think a lot of us have felt this way. And without trying to speak for anyone else, I wanted to ask about what you think about those things. You've made it clear about silver and gold and, actual metals, things like that. But regarding Pi and all these other, well, they seem like they could be connected to these central banks. And it's like, what's the point of putting in all this effort into these, digital, no such things, that it's just as fake as the money is the fiat currency. So what's the point of taking this fiat currency and converting it to something that's supposedly even more fake? Unless, I don't know everything. There's certain utilities to each different types of coin. Like, We've talked about XLM. I think ADA has come up once or twice in these conversations about this subject. So I'll just open the mic up there, and yeah, love to hear what you have to say about it. Thanks.
Yeah, so I don't have a lot to offer, but I'm gonna offer just my just kind of where I'm at with all of that. So uh, to me, anything in the digital space has much more risk to it than a piece of silver that I hold in my hand. So as far as like how I view things, even though there are some digital things that I've gotten into, it's like very, very small compared to what I've invested away through gold and silver, and primarily silver, because that stands that's the least expensive and stands the yeah, it's going to rise the highest. It's and that's guaranteed. There's no question there with that. It's such a useful utilitarian substance. I mean, unless we tap into true like alchemy, where we're transmuting other metals into that. But if we're doing that, then we're going to be at such a technological advanced way that we're not really going to be worried about money anyway. So the stepping stones until we get there, silver and gold are going to be very, very powerful. So anything outside of that, I view as sort of like a gamble. It's like, do I want to play this little game and see what happens? And yeah, there are times when I do. As far as pi goes, there's no money down, so there's no risk there. So that's like somebody giving you a bunch of free tokens to go spin in the slots. You're not spending any money. Maybe those things will turn out. Maybe they'll yield in a lot of value. If they don't, I haven't lost anything other than some time, 10 seconds at the most per day. So that there's very little risk there. So that to me is a no-brainer of like, might as well. We'll see what happens. If it doesn't pan out, like whatever, I didn't lose anything. The other ones that I do are XLM and XRP. Just based on, and I haven't done a ton of research, but just based on what I have done, they seem to have the most potential, or at least from what I've looked at, some of the most potential for having utilitarian purpose in transactions. So regardless of what we do and what we move to, there's going to be some need for ease of transaction. And that's what, on the sort of shinier side of banking, that's what they advertise themselves as being able to do, is allow transactions to go easier and whatever. Even though they encumbered that quite significantly, it still is that's the way it was presented. So we're going to transact, we're going to be trading and doing things, and it's unlikely that we're going to want to just carry around sacks of metal all the time to trade for stuff, especially since there's so much done in the online space. So there's going to be something that helps to navigate that. And if there's an infrastructure already set up and it's already been used and it's effective, then why wouldn't we shift to that? And everything I've seen from XRP and XLM, they seem to have a very good infrastructure and utilitarian purpose. So the likelihood of those being used is very high. Still, it's still not anything physical or real. So still there's risk. I don't put everything, I don't put all of that in there. I don't know exactly what my investment distribution is, but it's less than 5%, probably less than 2% is in digital coins. Most of it's in physical. So, and that's, that's stuff that I've held for years. I mean, I dumped my 401k into precious metals way back when I left the corporate world. And that's stuff that I've held onto for a time, because I know that will surge. So Yeah, so that's all I have to offer in the digital space. I don't have a lot of details and nuances or really much more to add. There might be, I know Darth has done a lot of research in that space. I don't know if you want to chime in on this topic or have much else to offer, but that's it for me.
Sure. The first thing I'd like to talk about is about a private or a CBDC, central bank digital currency. Central bank digital currencies are not categorically evil. Um, excuse me. It depends. You see, when it depends on whether it's like a central bank digital currency is like the law. Is the law above you, or is it beneath you? And if the central bank, if it's contained within a family and it's provided as a service for the people that are in that family, then it's not a bad thing. The problem with the private central bank, the Western central banks we have now, is that they're not part of our family. We're not, and it's above us. And that's the so the horse is sort of, behind the cart instead of in front of it. Like there's a natural order to things. So if let's say, for example, like if the Trump family wants to adopt everyone as members of their house, and then there's a bank that they set up, XRP or whatever, and it's for people that are operating within their house or want to do business with their house, then it's not categorically a bad thing. But when you take the bank and you obscure who owns it, see, like most people, they don't know who owns the Federal Reserve. They have no idea. And if you go to your local bank, like over here where we live, it's NBT. Who owns NBT? I could find out, but it wouldn't be easy. And I don't really know. And NBT is not part of my family. And so it's over me instead of being beneath me. So there's a proper order to things. So we've been kind of trained to think that, Western banks, people either worship them or they hate them, but they're not categorically evil. So that would be one of the transitions that we would go through before we get to a point where there's actually no more money, is that money would, instead of being a god over us, it would be a servant beneath us. And the difference between because XRP and XLM were both made by the same person, Jed McCaleb. So he made them both, but they have slightly different purposes. So XRP is a privately owned blockchain company, that Ripple, whereas XLM, I believe, it's a nonprofit organization. So I actually prefer XLM, but I only really prefer them philosophically. And regardless of what I feel philosophically, you still have to profit within the world. You have to progress, and you have to get more power, and you have to get so that you can do good things with that power. So if the entire world is using XRP, well, I mean, I'm still walking around. I got cash in my wallet, right? And I hate the Federal Reserve. I despise it. And yet I can't buy gasoline with a chicken, right? If I could, I would, but I can't. So I have to use cash. So right now it's looking like things are looking really good for both XRP, XLM. I also have a little bit of Algorand and Flare. I am completely out of Bitcoin. And of course, then I do have gold and silver. So that's what I'm currently invested in. However, spiritually, I'm looking forward to the day when we're completely free of money.
Yeah, thanks, Darth. Yes. So, did anyone else have anything on that, or Rowan, did you want to add any more?
Yes. Darth just, I love how Darth speaks. You too, Justin, but just the way that you say things, Darth, it really triggers my mind in the right way. Being within a family, like the being above or below a system, if you are involved in it or not, or the horse being behind the carriage instead of in front. That really got my mind going. Yeah. So, yes, that's exactly what I'm concerned about is that even the ones who are, let's say, the Federal Reserve family, whoever they actually are, people within that family, they're used and manipulated too, like it's a shark tank. And all that I see, I mean, I know I'm new to this. However, all that I see with all these different coins and supposed, like, kind of like families or, whichever example of whatever coin we want to use or currency system, is that even if you're in that family, you can still be eaten alive. And I'm not trying to get all dark and, make the conversation negative. It's just, I'm very careful about these things. I think like we all should be. And of course, it's wiser to have something much more feasible like silver or gold. However, we can't just lug that stuff around with us. It's all about utility and ease of transactions, and that makes sense to me. Of course, I think anyone with a logical mind would actually see that and agree with that too. However, it just seems like, I don't know, I'm just getting this flavor of manipulation or some kind of I don't know. It's hard to identify exactly what I'm thinking because I'm so new to this. So I don't want to just be, talking out of my ass basically. But it seems like it doesn't matter which one you choose. Like you have to make your own family. And lots of people try to do this. Like, I think that's the point of all this digital currency is there's so many hundreds of thousands of coins that you can get into, but so many of them are meme coins. They're this, they're that. I'm not trying to tie my own tongue up about this. It's just, it seems that all of it is very high risk, like you said, Justin, about it basically being gambling. But we can't really lug around a bunch of silver and gold. So, like, I'm just a student here. I'm not trying to teach or give anyone advice here, especially not financial advice. I'm just I have two ears to listen with and one mouth to speak with. So yeah, I've enjoyed listening to both of you about this. And if yeah, anyone else has some insight to this or experience with the utilities, like they've used these coins, that's something I almost never hear about. Or maybe I'm looking in the wrong place. Is actually using the coins and instead of just like buying and selling them like stocks, and it's basically just like a big online casino is what it sounds like. And I don't gamble. I have never been a gambler. I've never been a hard drugs person. Like I've stayed away from those worlds. Thank God. Thank Jesus for that. But yeah, let's see if anyone else has had experience with using these coins. They're so utilitarian, and I'm not trying to sound mocking of it. It's just I don't really hear anything about that, so would love to hear what others have to say. Yeah.
Well, just to add on that, the utility is not going to utility. It's like it's forward looking utility. So right now the infrastructure is all designed around the fiat banking system, and that old system is not going quietly. It's not just going to abandon itself because it was designed to consolidate power in a centralized way. And these digital coins often represent a as Darth mentioned, it's not always decentralized in every essence, but the transparency is what is key. So as long as everything is transparent, the transactions and the amounts, and there's no room for fraud and deception, then that's a system that benefits all. And so that's what's referred to with a utilitarian purpose. It has the potential to be used in a way to where it's not going to create a monster that we've seen within this old banking system. But as far as it being currently useful in every sense right now, that's not there because you'd have to have the adoption across the board. So that's where I'm saying it's still a gamble, because we as a society have not selected what we're going to use as our utilitarian service to conduct these transactions. It was guaranteed we are going to select something, and we tend to pick things that work the best. Usually, not always, but usually we tend to pick things that work work better than others. Sometimes it's just due to popularity or notoriety, as we see with things like Bitcoin. But Bitcoin has it doesn't hold its it doesn't hold its value from a utilitarian purpose. That's all just based on the name. So as soon as that becomes a more consistent, and you can buy things with Bitcoin, that those transactions are becoming more and more readily available. And as that happens, it's just going to continue exposing itself as this cumbersome beast that does not scale at all. And so that's not, in my mind, is not going to hold its value as we continue to adopt it in the future. But things like XRP and XLM have that potential to be adopted in that way. And so therefore the likelihood of them gaining in value is high. So right now it's simply just, it's a gamble to see which ones are we going to go with and how is that going to operate. Pi as well. It seems to be very useful from a utilitarian perspective and not just financial transactions. But we have to adopt it in order for that to actually mean anything. So as far as like the feeling of deception as you go look through these things, that's a guarantee that there's lots of deception out there within this, because the system that still exists is it's made around this like parasitic energy that's looking to feed and harvest off people and scam people and lure people into these ideas that are too good to be true and all of that kind of stuff. So we're having to navigate that as well, as this old system still exists. The white hats are in 100% control at where it counts, but you can't tell the people, you must show them. So we still have to feel the experience the old system. And if we still fall into old scams and things of that nature, that's part of our learning, our discernment to grow. I don't think the white hats are putting out these scam coins, but they probably are very well aware of them and allowing them to continue, because it's not the time to shut everything down. It's not the time to expose all of that in this moment. And while it might be uncomfortable for us to, go through experiences where we might fall into some trick or whatever, it's nothing compared to the big picture perspective of what we have to learn through so that we don't experience this kind of deception again. If we're still primed and ready to just fall into and start following the first carrot that's hung in front of our face, then we haven't learned anything. And this great awakening hasn't worked, and we're just going to fall back into the same shit again. So this is all about that. And in the digital space, you can find examples of that, but in every single space, you can find examples of that. Until when we start to adopt things in a widespread way, then there will be less room for scam things and false stuff to be created, because we'll have chosen, okay, what are we using? What is our commonly held idea for how we're going to transact? And then anything that stands outside of that is like, well, I'm not even going to waste time on that, because that's not what we're using. So we're in a unique sort of Wild West sort of period, and that's where I'm saying it's a gamble, especially when you deviate away from these things that aren't as well researched and stuff like that. I've there was a lot of stuff put out by Whiplash way back on a whole bunch of different coins and people. I even did a show on it way back with someone who was very adamant about that, and I've sort of changed my stance on those kind of things. I don't really know how much is going to happen, but when I was looking into that kind of stuff, I put maybe 10 cents at the most, a dime in in a whole bunch of these different little coins. So if I lose out on 10 cents, I'm not going to be upset about that. But that's how I view these kind of things. It's just kind of like whatever I put into the digital space, I'm completely willing to say goodbye to, and that's how I treat it, and what I would recommend anyone else doing as well. If you're putting stuff in the digital space, be prepared to lose it all. And that's a great way to be anyway. We don't need to be attached to stuff. I mean, we don't need to be foolish and just throwing away whatever at anything, but we don't need to be so holding on to that this has to look this particular way. And if I'm not if I'm not being responsible with my investments, or I'm putting away things that I can't afford to, then that's an introspective look that I need to take. But otherwise, it's just kind of like, do I want to take a risk here? And that's always been the case with investments. There's high risk investments and there's low risk investments. And to me, digital coins are and in my spectrum of what I invest in, those are my high risk investments, whereas gold and silver are my low risk investments. And that's where I stand. So yeah, so I'll just leave that there and see if anybody else wants to jump in. Yeah, go ahead, Darth.
All right, so here's some companies that are currently using XRP right now. That's going to be Amazon Web Services. They're already using it for some of their internal processes. American Express is using it for their internal international payments. Banco Rendimento is using it. Bank of America is testing for it right now. Bitso is using it. Coolix is using it. Della is using it. Italio Unibanco is using it. MoneyTap is using it. Santander is using it. Western Union is now testing it. Bank of Thailand is using it. Saudi Central Bank is using it. And Royal Monetary Authority of Bhutan is using it. And then World Bank is also looking into it. And now there is a Ripple RLUSD. It's a USD pegged stablecoin that's on the Ripple net. So you have XRP, and then you have all these sub tokens that are that can be made with XRP. I made one just to fool around with it, just to see if it worked, and it did. So now there's a stable coin that Ripple. It's RLUSD. It's US pegged 1-to-1. So that's some of the news that's going on with XRP. And then on top of that, Matthew Jacob did some background digging into how some of these corporations are trading XRP amongst themselves, and he calculated the value out to $327,000 per token. That's what he says. That's what he says is it's going on the private ledgers. So that's just an astronomical amount. Now with the XLM news, there are people that are using XLM like Tangem, Zag, Finclusive, Flutterwave, ClickPisa, EuroWallet, CoinVest. There are other people using it, but not the super massive institutions like XRP. So I'm continuing to invest in XRP and XLM and Algorand. And XLM and XRP aren't even really competitors. They're meant to serve a different purpose. So if XRP ends up at a super high value and XLM also goes up, but not to such a high extent, XLM would be more suitable because it's decentralized rather than the centralization of XRP. It would be more suitable for underinvested people or for people that aren't quite as wealthy. I mean, you wouldn't be able to use XRP to buy a gallon of milk, but you could conceivably use XLM in the days to come. So the system has to continue to run, and there's massive national families, and massive international organizations, and they're going to have to continue to function for a little while to come, even perhaps for years, while we make the transition. So I'm continuing to do research into XRP, and yesterday, the SEC dropped its case against XRP. And then we know that Trump also specifically mentioned XRP by name, on his first, I believe it was his first, truth. And then a bunch of people complained, and then he also went back and also mentioned Bitcoin. But originally, on his original truth post, he just mentioned XRP and a couple other, coins. So far, I'm not seeing anything to say to get out of XRP. I am seeing plenty of indicators to say to get out of Bitcoin and to run, and that we should have never been in it.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Wow. Wow.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. That was a lot of information. I know there's a replay, but if it would be possible, could we have this list of basically these coins that are actually being used entered into the group chat, just so that for those of us who do want to look more into it, we can, because that's what I've been looking for, and that's why I'm so what's the word I'm looking for? Superstitious about this whole thing, is that there's just so many people's opinions, and it's been very difficult to identify opinions from facts. So, yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Doug. And I do know Donald Trump has mentioned a few things about these particular subjects. However, we just want to, like, for me personally, I just like to interact with those who I maybe haven't met you guys in real life, but we're all in constant communication with each other. I think we're all relatively trustworthy, right? So yeah, that would be great if we could just have that list, Darth. Maybe you could send it to Justin, and then he could put it up into the chat, and that could help a lot of us. Of course, it's not financial advice; it's technically just for entertainment purposes. And yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that, Dirk. That helped me out a lot. And yeah, thanks, Justin. I'll close the mic here.
Awesome. Yeah. Anyone else got anything? Want to either on this topic or take us in a new direction? All is welcome. All right. Well, here is a written question from Beck. And she was asking about, so she saw on Joanna and B's channel, Passion for Fruit, she saw a post referencing how, according to the Gospel of Judas, which was found in the 1970s, Judas might have received direct instructions from Yeshua to turn him in, playing a tragic role in a larger plan. So I've heard of this before, and so Beck was just asking for my thoughts on it. And so essentially, was Judas in with Yeshua to either fake his death or turn him in to create that story? And I'll just say that I was not there at that time. So I don't know for certain how it happened and how things went down, but I've heard this before, and I would say it's very possible to have that be a way that this unfolded, and it would make a lot of sense too. You know, if Yeshua knew that they were gunning for him, they were going to try and kill him, why would he not be the first one to fake his death, or you know, one of the first ones? Or maybe he actually, quote unquote, died and did transcend the physical death in that way. That's possible as well, which is very similar to and fitting for the time period of the Kennedy files being released, and sort of what happened on that fateful day as well, where Jack knew what he was getting into, and potentially there was a coordination by the White Hats to intercept what was a Black Hat plot to kill him, and they did it in a way to where he didn't actually die. So parallels within that, quite possibly, because it's the same story that always gets told, and those would just be the figures that played it in this time period. So yeah, I don't have a whole lot more to add on that, other than just it's very possible, and yeah, why not? So I'll just leave that one there. Darth had some interesting things to say about that when I asked him the other day, so I'm curious if you want to share that here.
Ooh, we say a lot of interesting things, though. And now I'm trying to remember. Well, okay. So the thing about the past is that there's not just a single past, because so like, for example, up here in upstate New York, there's a lot of history up here, just in the fairly immediate recent history within the last 3 or 4 generations. So we had there was an American Civil War, and there was the American Revolutionary War, and then there was the conflicts between the settlers and the Native Americans. And all of those events happened. And yet, when I walk across the field, if I dig down far enough, I one time found a bayonet that belonged to a musket. Okay, dug that up. But why can't I see it? Like, why can't we see the past? It's because we're not resonating with it. As we move forward in time, our bodies, the resonance changes, and it locks out the past and locks out the future. But as we make choices, it changes how we resonate with our environment. That's how the law of attraction works, right? So if you have a positive expectation, a positive faith and gratitude, then you can resonate something into manifesting right in front of you through no physical effort of your own. But that also changes what time you have access to. So as we mature and as we make decisions, we change. Our perspective changes. And then if you go back in time, even to the time of your own life, you might go back to an event and it occurred differently because you're now a different person. So going back to something as far away as, the betrayal of Jesus Christ, that is a couple thousand years ago, possibly more or less, and through several versions of the Matrix. It's so far away to almost be arbitrary and meaningless. Because there are people that could go back and they're being honestly, they're going through the process and they're doing it in good faith, and they could go back to a timeline in which Jesus actually was hung on the stake and he actually was betrayed. And yet there's other people, and they go back to a timeline in which through trickery Jesus escaped, and it was Judas or a twin or whatever. And they're all equally valid from the perspective of the absolute divine. And sitting in the position of the absolute infinite as the source of every timeline, they're all equally valid to him. There's a timeline right now in which there's no life on Earth, and it's equally valid. There's a timeline of every possible conceivable decision that you could think of, and they're all equally valid. And this timeline that we're in right now, from the perspective of the absolute divine, it's just one of a plethora of others. But because we're confined in the persona, in the physical state, we're not able to see all of them. And we can't even see the entirety of the timeline of this moment that we're in now. So did Judas, was he good? Was he evil? I tend to look at these things from the perspective of the absolute. The answer would be yes to both those questions. I think that's the conversation that we had. And artifacts from multiple timelines can appear and manifest into a single one, because we're not meant to look. That's part of the whole thing about the internet age and the electronic age, is everyone's trying to look at all the information at the same time, and they think that they can't miss out on something. But what happens? That's not the way reality was meant to work. We're not supposed to see everything, because when you're not looking, things exist as an infinite probability. Okay. When you're not looking, it doesn't exist. And then once you glance, you measure it with your eyesight, and then things coalesce into a single actuality from an infinite probability. And reality is like that, so that it can meet the needs of everyone. So you have two twin brothers walking down a street, and one brother wants chocolate and the other one wants vanilla, right? And reality is able to meet both of their needs. But if you're trying to look at everything all the time, well, you're going to get a whole bunch of conflicting information. So it's entirely possible and reasonable to expect that artifacts from all kinds of different timelines are going to manifest into this one. And so you could find ancient documents, and they can directly contradict each other and yet both be true, because that's just the way reality works. It doesn't have to make logic rational sense, because it transcends that. Because if that's part of the scientific methodology of saying everything is material and everything either is or isn't, and there's only one way of seeing things, but that's not the way God made it. Because first of all, God himself is not just one thing. He's existing in all possible positions and places and situations and states. And so he doesn't even agree with himself. And why would he? And reality's made in his image, and he wouldn't want to do that, because then how could he meet the needs of everyone, since everyone's so diverse?
Yeah, it gets real deep real quickly. But I appreciate that. I appreciate that perspective, because it helps to, yeah. And it, part of that conversation we had too was just imagining how we might get to a space where time ceases to have any meaning whatsoever, and we don't keep track of history or worry about the future, because we're just living blissfully forever in the perpetual now, which is all that really is. All else is just a construct.
You're right about that. Part of the reason why the past even still exists is because we keep looking at it. If we all just stop looking at it, then it'll just demanifest.
Yeah, but it gets tricky, because part of the ways that the forces of the antichristic forces use to control is by destroying record of the past to diminish the connection with the now. So it's like we can't jump to that necessarily, but eventually we might find a way, when there is no evil in this space, where we can do that. But it's going to be an interesting ride to get there. So anyway, it's a really deep topic, but yeah, thanks for sharing that. So yeah, I'll just pass it off and see if anyone else wants to jump in, either on this topic or take us any which direction. Hey, Jeff, go ahead, brother. Yeah, we're not hearing you if you're saying anything.
There you go. How's that? Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. Sorry, it kind of goes with the topic, I guess. I was thinking about this the other day. I can't remember how I was saying it, but like in past civilizations, however many resets they did, or however far back it goes, pre-internet, pre-newspapers, or pre-reset, whatever. Like in past civilizations, do you think they were more informed than us? Like now we have so much information, you don't even know what's true or what's not true anymore. It's like it's way too much. Like in past civilizations, do you think they were more informed than us, or less informed, and was that a detriment to them to be less informed, or do we have the upper hand now because we have the internet, or this mass manipulation, sharing information that we don't know is true or not, or true? Yeah, it's kind of a weird question, but I guess what are your thoughts on previous civilizations? Do you think they were more informed or less informed?
Well, yes. Yes, both. I mean, it's essentially the exploring the spectrum of Christic and anti-Christic ways. So the more aware and informed we are, the more Christic, the more of that Christic energy we embody, the more Christ exists and manifest physically. but then there's also plenty of times when there's none of that, or hardly any of it. Of course, it can't be eliminated completely, and we've fallen into that state. So we've been both much worse off and much better off in a lot of ways, but it's all sort of relative too. And so yeah, I've spoken before about how what I've been told about Atlantis being, at least as far as we know, the height of where we've gone to with the most alignment to the Christic way and the most Christ being born and manifested, and then from there we fell and have gone through the sine wave going up and down. So we've fallen and then we've risen, and we've fallen, have risen, and sometimes we fall to new depths and sometimes we rise to new heights. And this seems like a potential where we've fallen to quite a depth where we will rise to quite a height, and that's exciting. But yeah, I mean, to your question, there's not really because it's often described with like the whole evolution nonsense that gets pushed on from a scientific perspective, that we came from cavemen and all of that. But there certainly have been many of times where we've been extremely primitive and extremely disconnected and very tribalistic and warlike, and I'm sure that's existed, and I'm sure a lot of the quote unquote history that we've been told about that has been a complete farce as well. To sort of illustrate and take us away and pretend that the Dark Ages existed a long time ago, when in reality we're in a very dark age. So it gets tricky, and it's like, again, where we put our attention grows in power, and sometimes that is helpful and sometimes it's not. So I can't say for certain either way, but yeah, that's all I've got there. It gets yeah. So I hope that helps answer your question. That's all I've got on that.
Yeah, no, that's all good. Thanks.
Awesome. Anybody else want to jump in, or yeah, either on that topic or take us any direction?
Yeah, if I could just butt in quickly here about this entire, well, yeah, where do I start? Is something like this has come up a few times for me. I feel like maybe it's come up for others. Is that some of these conversations just get to a point where, I mean, this is not criticism of any kind. It's not to sound negative or anything. It's just that we all know that we don't know everything, and we're just here to learn, whether we're here in this Telegram chat or, in other, say, online forums, or even just talking amongst friends face to face. Is that we are in this age of abundance. As dark of an age as it might be, we do have a lot of information to sift through. We have these amazing, divinely designed minds and souls and spirits to figure it all out. But that particular part about how, I can't remember if it was exactly Dark who said this or both of you kind of talking about it, and it was a very interesting subject about how history, like if we just simply stopped talking about it, it would just kind of fizzle away from existence. And we need some history so that we know what the Christ energy or the Christ consciousness even is. I mean, if we just went into this state of basically what sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, but forgetfulness or even laziness for that matter, and if we're in this, I mean, that sounds like heaven, right? Like we're in a state where we're protected by the Father, basically. We can be like children again. We're just playing in His kingdom and enjoying every part of the present moment that is everlasting. But it's like we need to have a certain level, or I would say a standard. I think this is the Christ energy speaking through me right now about this very subject, is we do need to know some history. And if we simply didn't, the history is written by the victor. And if we don't even learn who the victors were and how they lied about, good people, and ones who deserve to be remembered for their efforts to preserve, Christ consciousness. And from what I've been learning more about the Bolshevik Revolution is that there's some individuals who deserve to be remembered. Like there's many people before them as well. Like we wouldn't be here able to even have these conversations if there weren't certain warriors, or whether they're men or women, of the divine masculine or feminine, who did their part, and they died some pretty horrible deaths, and they did it all in the name of Christ consciousness. Really, I mean, they're the ones that we look up to, and if we just didn't have historical records to refer to who these people were or what they stood up for, and a lot of them were very humble. I mean, most of them were actually. I mean, if they're willing to die for the greatest of all things, like protecting children and, future generations, people they know they'll never meet. They loved us more than a lot of people that I've had in my life. I think a lot of us who, like, they're in our own family, and they never showed us anything remotely close to that type of love. And I just think it's very difficult for more people to awaken when, I think, like, I'm not, again, criticizing anyone here. It's just, I think when these things come up where it's like, oh, history doesn't matter, or this or that, it won't matter at one point. Like, it's for those of us who maybe aren't on the same level, they'll hear that and they'll just want to walk away, and it'll be a lot of effort that not only they put in, but all these other conversations, whether they're with us or with others, will no longer matter, and they will have been almost like kind of, I wouldn't want to use such a harsh word as tricked, but basically almost, yeah, tricked into like, oh, like none of this even matters. Like there's no point to learning any of this. And it gets kind of nihilistic and hopeless. And I've met a lot of people who have actually had these experiences. When I was in Thailand, actually, I met this French diver who, he knew everything that I was talking about and supposedly even more. But something happened with him where he simply lost interest because of, I'm assuming, I try not to assume, but I am assuming that he had something said to him by someone who was like us, where it's like, it doesn't even matter, or like one day at one point history is not going to matter, or there can be all these different timelines for, like we just talked about Jesus and Judas supposedly helping him fake his death and all these things. And I feel like I'm getting really wordy here, but I feel like you know what I'm talking about. Is that I'm very careful when I venture into these areas, because it even has an effect on me where it's like, oh, why am I even learning about this? Like, should I just go back to eating meat if none of this matters? Like, we need to know certain history, like, oh, why cancer happens, or, growth of a tumor, which is a parasite, which is feasting on, this and that. It's a lot of useful information, but if it's just not going to matter, I mean, it almost feels pointless. And that's where it gets nihilistic and just
Right.
dumb.
Let me
So, yeah,
let me
I'm going to stop there.
Let me jump in. So the Christic path is all about balance. And I know that you're not intentionally doing this, but you're jumping to an extreme of like, this doesn't matter. And so where's the balance within that? Because I would challenge that, and I'd say the only way to truly embody a fully Christic self is if there is no need for past or future or any of that. It's truly just embodied unconditional love in each and every moment. And so if we need, it's like learning about the past. So I'm not, and I'll clarify this as well, I'm not speaking to the masses, nor do I really have intention on speaking to the masses. This is not a space that I know, based on the works and the conversations and the difficulty and perceiving the things that are discussed here, I know that the masses are not really going to find this space. And if somebody does find it, that means that they're budding and stepping away from that. So that would not be a message that I would speak to anybody or just throw out there carelessly, because, and let's, like the review of the past and how that moves through us. It's like training wheels. I'm not negating or saying that it's not important for us to learn about what has happened so that we can fix the mistakes and shift into a better trajectory. in this moment, we're like infants, and we're very much learning. And that's important that we do that. It's like, I fundamentally am an anarchist. Anarchy and without archon, without is ruler. So I'm an anarchist. I don't feel like there needs to be rulers or authority figures that are just innately given authority to control others' lives. Everyone is a sovereign in this space. But I'm not going to sit here and say that we should just immediately flip off all forms of government and any form of structure that has been created, because people are so dependent on those right now. So right now, people are very much dependent on learning through this sort of mental, intellectual way of studying the past to rewrite and learn from our mistakes and move forward. But innately within us is the Christ. The Christ needs no definition. It needs no proof. It needs no history to show where it has shown up. It needs no evidence that it's there. It simply is. And the degrees of which we have forgotten who we truly are is what we get to unravel. And so, yes, at times, through however long it needs to be, we use training wheels to learn to ride a bike, right? So as we're learning to ride this experience, as we're learning to step back into ourselves, having things like historical reference and learning about what has happened so that we don't repeat things is beautiful. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if that becomes our attachment, that we always have to maintain diligently every single record, and we always have to be hyper focused on what has happened, and we got to make sure everything is, then we're always going to reside in that intellectual space. That's that from a mental perspective, what you're saying or what I'm saying or what we have talked about makes no sense. But this creation is not here to always make sense, right? It's not here to always have the mental is not, the intellect is not here to run the show. It's a part of this experience, but we are beyond that. So there's room in navigating that, where allowing that to be let go of at some point or another. But it does have to be done with great care, so that we don't fall into if we're still bound by the egoic control within ourselves, then that gets used as a tool to spiritually bypass, to say, hey, it's maybe intellectually I've learned that the past doesn't matter, and so therefore I can just fall into this nothing matters, and I can fall into moral relativism, where I define my morals based on whatever I want to do at any moment, and it doesn't matter because I can change those. And all of that are tricky ways that we can fall into these things. So you're right in acknowledging the cautious perspective around discussion around these things. Absolutely. But I'll again reiterate that I'm not speaking to the masses. And if someone is uncomfortable with, and I'm not saying that you're uncomfortable with the ideas, but just if somebody is uncomfortable with that or isn't ready to hear those kind of things, then it's not really going to make sense to them, or it's not going to fit. Yeah. So I hope that makes sense. It's more just, we are learning where we are, and it's very difficult to always be catering every message and everything to everyone. It's impossible. I'll say it's impossible to cater to everyone. A master teacher is able to disseminate messages that have layers within them to reach everyone at every level based on who they're speaking to, or at least as best as they can, to cast their net as wide as possible to reach the greatest audience, to catch the most fish. But at some points or another, there's always going to be a recognition of like, oh, I'm in these waters, so I'm going to use this type of net. Not advocating literally to go fishing, but just using that allegory. I've got to use this type of hole in this net and this type of water because that's who I'm speaking to. And so I just want to again reiterate that I'm not casting my net to the masses in this moment, nor speaking in that way. The concepts that we speak about are extremely blasphemous from that perspective. I mean, to sit here and say that I am God and you are God and we are all God, it's heresy. that would never be spoken in that way, and it wouldn't be something that I would put out there if I did have an opportunity to speak to a larger audience, as people aren't ready for that. And so a lot of the messages in here are going to be in that space of it's not ready for the masses to hear that kind of thing. Nor do I know if, maybe the masses will shift into being ready to hear that kind of stuff, but we're not there yet. So just want to make that clear. And then just, again, everything's all about balance. So if I'm acknowledging in this moment historical learning about what we've gone through and what we've done, what has happened, the truth about how things have been distorted and what has been manipulated, is to some degree important for us to do for a time. But if that becomes our identity and our attachment is always picking apart the past, and if we are only mentally viewing that perspective, then creation is going to continually keep us in this loop of unable to find, because you're the only one that you're looking for. So if you need to look for yourself in this idea of the past, you can, but you're sort of stepping away from here and now of who you really are. And that's the most important of all. So I hope that makes sense, but I'll, balance is key. Balance is always key. So I'll just pass it back.
Hey, can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
All right. So, I want to congratulate him in figuring it out. That about the meaninglessness of the situation. So this is the Ecclesiastes. It's from the Bible, Ecclesiastes chapter 1. Chapter 1. It says, I, the teacher, as about the Solomon, was king over Israel and Jerusalem. I applied my mind to study and to explore by wisdom all that is done under the heavens. What a heavy burden God has laid on mankind. I have seen all the things that are done under the sun. All of them are meaninglessness, a chasing after the wind. He goes, what do people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun? Generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. All things are wearisome, more than one can say. What has been will be again, and what has been done will be done again. There's nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which one can say, look, this is something new? It was here already, long ago. It was here before our time. No one remembers the former generations, and yet even those yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow them. So, this is why it takes bravery and courage to move forward into time, because time, being infinite, consumes everything. I mean, name 3 courageous people from the Assyrian Empire. Name one. Okay, I know like a couple of names from the Babylonian Empire. Okay, and after that was the Medo, the Persia, the Greeks, the Romans. I mean, name 10 people from the Roman Empire. Well, if you named the apostles, that would give you 12. Jesus would give you 13. But the point is other than that, I mean, who else do we really remember? And yet we were there and will be here again, since consciousness cannot be destroyed. So, knowing then that the vast majority of the toils that we do here are pointless, then what really is of value? What's of value is the experience, especially the love, the compassion, the kindness, the generosity, all of the Christic spirits that we display. That's the only thing that has meaning. But the money, the standing up so that this empire won't fall. I mean, do you really think there's going to be in America forever? And so many people have died and bled and sweat and fought and cried and tears. And yet the infinite time makes all of it meaningless. So it's true. He was right. But that doesn't mean that the Christic spirit doesn't exist. And that doesn't mean that goodness and truth doesn't exist, because goodness and truth does exist, and it does give meaning to our lives, and the experience is valid. Despite the fact that time will consume it all, We have been here before, and we will be here again, and we'll always be here. And that's the promise that the Christ gives us.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely. And I want to add too, Beth gave a comment in the group chat. She said, when we are one with Christ, there is no past. Let's focus on building new, not examining past mistakes. And while that is true to a degree, I just want to also make sure that it's very clear. I wrote in return, so it's not inherently ignoring the past always, but only the precise amount necessary to learn from and move forward. It's tricky because this idea that she mentioned, while true, can also be used by the ego to spiritually bypass. Balance is key. If we are truly an embodied Christ, then we have nothing in the past to transmute. But I mean, I will just speak for myself. I am not a fully embodied Christ in all moments. So I still have very much room to examine my past so that I can see where I have missed the mark and learn from it and move forward. But I only examine that past for that specific intention of transmutation, not to just sit there and dwell in it, not to hold on to it. So right now we're, again, in this sort of infantile state. We have not embodied our truest essence, and we have a lot of gifts that we can glean from the quote unquote past in order to learn from. But then it's letting that go as soon as that lesson is there, and as soon as that integration is there. And then when we are walking in that space, there's no real need to examine the past because we are a fully embodied Christ in all moments. And so there's no need to examine Christ's behavior because it is the Christ. So I just want to throw that word of caution out there that the ego can use that concept, just like any of these things that we talk about. The ego can very much use the concept of you are God. And, the ego now thinks that, I'm God and I'm more God than others. So therefore I can do all these things and get away with it, or use my authority to get my way and all of that kind of stuff. Like, that's a concept that can be manipulated by the ego and used in that way. So we just have to be careful. And as Rowan threw that word of caution out there, it's good to be mindful of how that can show up. So yeah, I see Cheryl. Raise your hand. Go ahead.
I must have accidentally pushed the button, but no, I don't have a question. Great conversation.
All right. Well, great. Thanks for chiming in. Good to hear you. And yeah, Rowan, did you have any follow up on what's been discussed?
Yes, I certainly do. I'm just at the same time digesting everything that's been said, 'cause it's a lot of information. And even with information we might know a little bit about, we always learn a little bit more when we're having these conversations. So yeah, pardon me if I sound like I'm maybe not scripted. I mean, I don't ever like being scripted like a robot anyways. But yeah, you know what, actually, because I take up the mic quite a bit throughout this particular show, I'm not gonna try to force myself to say anything. Yeah, no, just thank you again, Darth, and you too, Justin, um, and for just adding what you have added to my spiritual library. And I just have to read through it more. And I just try not to take up the time on the mic here that could be shared with others. Because I just don't know enough. That's why I'm here. So thank you again, you guys. If anyone else, wants to keep talking about this or bring up something else, I'm just listening at this point. But yeah, I'll chime in if I feel like I need to, as long as I'm allowed. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah. Does anyone else want to chime in either on this topic, or feel free to take us another direction? You're more than welcome. All right. Well, here's a question from Pauline Roberts. And she asks, can you explain to me how in the UK we can get instructions regarding Nesara, etc.? I haven't got a clue about how we go about it as there's no instructions. Thanks. So yeah, I've gotten this question in other forms before of just like a lot of, so I'll just say very simply that nothing put out there is going to have complexity and a complex path that you have to follow and figure out, and it's going to be exclusive only to those who figure things out. We're seeing the return, the wealth of the wicked is saved up for the righteous. So we're seeing our wealth return to us, and it's not going to be convoluted or complicated to get it. I've been told that don't be surprised if you see an extraordinary amount of money just sitting in your bank account one day, or however that gets to you. But it's going to be simple. It's going to be easy. It's not going to require some complex form that you have to fill out, or you have to contact certain people. If you are advertised that by anyone, either they're knowingly or unknowingly scamming you out of money to try and sell you some service, to say, oh, you need to buy all this currency or whatever through my services, or you need to go through this page or pay me for this or this form or whatever. That's just a money-making scheme, another scam attempt to get you. There's nothing like that. Nothing is going to be complex. Nothing is going to be troublesome to acquire this. They're appealing, like those of us who are paying attention to in any degree are we're not the majority. We're not the majority. We're moving in that direction, but we are definitely not the majority. And what's coming is going to reach everyone, whether you have, whether you even know how to use a computer or not. There's not going to be a bar to entry. It's not going to be difficult. So I wouldn't worry about that. Yeah, it's going to be simple. So we're not quite there yet, but you'll know. There won't be any question. There won't be any having to ask for, applying for, going anywhere. It's you'll know. So I'll just leave that one there and pass it off.
Yeah, actually, I thought I was going to refrain from taking the mic again for a bit, but no, that just triggered a thought. Was when these amazing amounts appear in any of our bank accounts, regardless of whatever institution we are banking with or whatever you want to call it, is the bank will see that and they'll probably consider it as income. And I'm not trying to play into the fear-mongering tax game here, but you're just describing the easiness of the situation when it does present itself. And that's, well, it does. I don't think any of us have experience with this, unless I'm wrong, is when this amount shows up, whatever it is, and the bank sees that, and well, they can see what your balance was before, they would probably have some questions. And so I'm not trying to introduce complexity where it doesn't exist, but we don't know what this might pertain to, if it exists or not as a problem. If it's even a problem, is how would you have that discussion with them? Or just, it's not even a discussion, it's what was stolen from us. So I mean, what would you say? Like I feel like I'm already playing back into the intellectual game, like, oh, what do you say when this happens? What do you say when that happens, when this could be taxable, all this stuff. So yeah, I would love to hear if anyone has any contribution to what the steps would be. Like you said, there's no steps, but I feel like we're on a stairway to heaven or a stairway to hell. We're always going up or down steps in every moment. So yeah, I'll just open it up there. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, you're thinking about this in too small of a scale. I'm talking about every single person earthwide, every banking institution that's going to last through this is going to be recalibrated simultaneously through that moment. There's not going to be this old structure, tax system, or any of that nonsense or garbage. There's not, all of that stuff is going to be gone. So no one's going to have any, any institution that's going to be in charge of doing that isn't going to have room to question where this came from. And if they do, they don't need to, because they know exactly what's been happening, because they've been working with the white hats to make this happen. So there's not going to be any more. Yeah, I would just say, just pause the mental. It's going to be okay. Everything's going to be groovy, great, wonderful for everyone. We're going to go through a period that is going to seem very scary and intense. I don't know how long that's going to last or what that's going to look like. But as this old financial system does collapse, it's going to scare the shit out of a lot of people. I see that as you know, the plan is fluid, but it does seem like that's highly likely that that's going to happen. So I'm jumping to a more end state where the wealth is being redistributed. Until that point, it's going to look, there might be times where we don't even have access to a bank account, or maybe all bank accounts get wiped for a period of time. I don't know. But I know at the end of the day, everything's going to be redistributed and brought back to what is right. And asking people questions about where the money that they are owed comes from, or attempting to tax on that, is not right. And that will not happen. So again, do not worry. Yeah, there's no need to worry.
Yeah, I think I'm overthinking. However, however, is if this is going to be sent to everybody, and we know that a lot of people have resorted to criminal activity or even abusing another individual, like violence, whether it's physical or non-physical, it could just be verbal, but like in a way that actually caused harm to another individual. This has been another question in my mind, is when this does happen. Thanks for elaborating on how like the banks involved with this whole redistribution or depositing would work. Is it just simply would not be right, and it would be probably corrected quite quickly. Like, they ask you, where'd you get this money from? But then it's like that record of the conversation with them even asking you disappears, and then it's not a problem or something. But I'm concerned about, well, if everyone's going to get all this money, like there's some people who, particularly here in Canada, like there's East Hastings Street, there's so many people suffering from drug abuse, and whether it's fentanyl, this, that, or whatever, is that, like we're talking about a really big subject here. I'm not trying to complicate it. It's just everyone's going to get this money, whoever's alive to receive it still, right? And even those people who are alive to receive it, some of them will have not, let's say, done the work to rid themselves of certain lifestyles or just ways of living, things about their life that are not what you would call favorable or beneficial to themselves or anyone else around them, especially their own family. Is that, wouldn't that cause a little bit of craziness? Like, would we see kind of like we're waiting for a really big wave to surf here, and some of us are going to be surfing it just fine. We're going to be just cruising along, like we're not, have anything to worry about. But there's going to be a lot of people who, they're not going to be able to handle this. Like, it could be a blessing literally falling from the sky into their bank accounts. But at the same time, they're going to have a lot of questions. They're like, who would they even talk to? But those are the ones who just have the minds to even question what's going on, or to, look into what has happened when it does happen. And then there'll be those who will just be like, I don't give a fuck about where this came from. I'm just going to do whatever I want and party hard and just cause even more chaos. Like, I mean, because there's the dark side and the light side. I know this sounds like I'm overthinking, but I just enjoy doing my due diligence to do my research, and this is part of the research. So I'll cut it up there, and would love to hear what you have to say. Yeah.
Well, I'll just say this: we can play the what if game all day, and I admire when Trump talks to or addresses certain questions, and they're like, well, what if Russia doesn't honor the ceasefire, or what if this happens, and what it's like. We will address that in whatever way we need to make sure the right things are done. So that first and foremost, I there's not a whole lot of point for us to spend time deliberating on that, because I'm not in charge of the levers of when that's going to happen, nor am I the judge of these specific instances that you're hypothesizing or the speculating or whatever, like, are putting out there that might exist or whatever. People have been incredibly traumatized for a long time, generations, if at least. So judging people on actions of what they've done in the past or whatever to determine whether they should receive financial redistribution of what's been stolen from them, that's not something that I'm going to, I don't need to spend a lot of time and effort on that. If I were presented with a specific case and I were asked what would I do here, then sure, I could do that. But to just throw it at, well, what if bad people get money and what if they do bad things? Well, then they will be caught and they will be stopped. I've had consistently told to me, don't be evil after the EBS. After this disclosure, our intolerance for evil is going to go through the roof. We're not going to be tolerant of evil at all. So anyone taking advantage of somebody else, anyone harming somebody else, anyone choosing to do that, it's not going to be tolerated. It will not exist. Certainly not for very long. Not with that extreme consequence. So don't worry about that kind of stuff. And as far as people receiving money that, you might not feel justly deserve to have their money received or whatever, just be careful about playing that game of judging different instances or different people of who should receive or who shouldn't, because we don't know where everyone's been or what they've been through, what sort of trauma somebody's received. And yes, maybe they have done whatever themselves, but this is going to be a big opportunity for us to find that forgiveness and to move forward in that way and have that level playing field that Trump talks about, to where everyone has the finances that they can leave relationships or family dynamics if there's abuse or problems. That hasn't existed before. So now there won't be any reason why somebody stays with their narcissistic abuser. There won't be any reason why, unless they just are inept and completely unable to just do what they need to do, which that can happen as well. But as of now, the vast majority of the circumstances are simply financially stricken. They can't leave because they can't go anywhere. So that problem will cease to exist. People will be free to move it about. So naturally, the karmic laws within creation will work. And those who are continuing to stay in that old system built on abusing and taking advantage of others, karma is going to be very quick to respond in that, and it will not work. And they'll have their just reward. But we don't need to sit here and speculate about what all the things could happen or what might happen in this scenario or whatever, because that's not what's happening now. And we could go endlessly down that train and still go nowhere. It doesn't yield anything. If there were a specific conversation with somebody in a specific instance, sure, we could talk about it. But I would just say in general, trust that this has been a plan in the making for a long, long time. And they haven't been sitting there. They've been working tirelessly, day in, day out, to make sure that they have all the things set up in the best way possible, because they know that when this switch is flipped, there's no going back. And so, of course, they're going to design it so that everything goes as smoothly as possible, that there's a smooth transition, as Trump likes to talk about. But I'm sure there will be things that we have to figure out on the go as well. There's areas that we can't foresee or know exactly. However, the team that is doing that has access to every single keystroke that has ever been pressed in this digital space. They have every bit of data that's ever been collected to use to determine what's the best way to go about this, or at least from a data perspective. So they're making those decisions in that way. And then spiritually, they are very connected to this Christic way, this Christic bloodline that's very much guiding energetically and physically this space as well. So we're literally being helped by the highest group of people that you can imagine. Still men and women, still capable of making mistakes. We still will have to correct things, but they are certainly much more experienced and apt at addressing these things than I am. And so they're going to have all these questions ready to go. They're not, again, it's not going to be complex. There's not going to be problems. I mean, I won't say that. There will be problems that arise, but when we have a system that is solution oriented, right now, this system, as we see it, virtue signals and pretends like it addresses problems, but really it just rewards the problems, rewards those who create the issues, and punishes those who do good, punishes the solutions. The script is being flipped the other way, to where the problems aren't going to be able to exist, and those who push problems are not going to do well at all. And any problems that result naturally or just through change and through development will address them, because everyone will be aligned to that and every system will be working towards that. I mean, we're seeing a small scale example with things like Doge. You know, we've got Elon Musk going in there with some very common sense things, very common sense, laying this out. Like, why are we spending these, why are there 120 or whatever million plus people? Why are there millions of people that we're paying on Social Security that are dead, well over 120 years old? You know, like these common sense things are being addressed. So we're starting to see that, we're starting to get a taste of what it looks like to have organized sense put back into this space. And that's only a small taste. So there won't need to be like, it's only going to get better. So again, I would just say, like, careful with the what if trajectory and always going down that space. It can be fun for a time, but it, in my experience, is not very fruitful, because it doesn't have to do with me here and now and what's facing me in this moment. And then I start trying to figure out problems that are not even mine, nor problems that I can even do anything about in this moment. So we just have to let it unfold as it does, and trust that it's being done in the best way possible. This is truly God's plan. So God is in every single bit of it, and it is coming forward in the most beautiful, harmonious way possible, knowing that that change is going to result in some chaos and shifting. There's going to be some discomfort that we go through, but it's going to be uniting together so that we work through those issues as in the best way possible for all, not isolated to just elites or those who set themselves up to gain the most, but truly for all. So I'll just leave that one there and pass it back.
Yeah, you just opened up a pathway to, it's connected to the subject. Is, I know it's not my place to think about, oh, what will happen with this other individual or group of individuals. You know, there's everything that you just described. And I do think, I mean, it's not just me that goes through this. It's any of us who have been through a particular, maybe childhoods or younger experiences, where if we did not behave, I mean, it's not because we wanted to, but we had to survive. And it's very difficult to let go of certain techniques that we use to get through those times. And so everything that we're talking about, whether it's this show and like all the shows before and the ones to come, it's all about unlearning and basically relearning. So it may sound like I'm being overthinking, or like, in a way, yeah, it is kind of fun to like think about all these what ifs, because before, for me, it was not fun. It was out of absolute necessity. And if I didn't do it, it's like being a military commander. You have to like know how to coordinate your resources and your forces to make sure that, and I'm the kind of general that would never want to be attacking. I'm the one that wants to be defending. So that's what I was always doing, was just defending what I had and making sure that others couldn't take from me, because so much was taken. And like you just said about this system, how it punishes the ones who try to do good and rewards the ones who do bad. And that's exactly where I'm coming from. And just like the rest of us, So yeah, you've given me a nice healthy reminder to not play too into the what if game, because it really is a game that at a time maybe before it did have a gain for gain, but we are entering this age of no pain, no gain. Now, it's not maybe the same when it comes to weightlifting and stuff and destroying to create more muscle, for example. But super fascinating conversation we're having here. So yeah, just thanks again. I'll open up the mic.
Yeah, thanks. Anyone else want to jump in, either on this topic or take us any which way? Feel free. All right. Well, this was kind of a follow-up of what we talked about last night on the Gospel of Thomas, part 3. And this was a question Beth asked if we could cover this again about discerning which professionals to trust. So I think we were talking about trusting lawyers or doctors or, and what I said on that call, and I'll reiterate, with these systems, like the medical system, like the legal system, all of these things are tentacles of the octopus that are designed to strangle us and reduce our potential of remembering who we truly are as Christic beings. That I can say with certainty, that they were designed for that purpose, in a myriad of ways. And we could spend all day talking about all the ways that this was designed to snuff us out, to dim our light, to bring us down. So I don't look at someone as inherently part of an institution just because they are a doctor or a lawyer. They are, first and foremost, they are a child of God. They're a human being. They have that Christic potential within them. They stem from God goodness. However, these institutions are designed to steer people away from that as far as physically possible. And they've successfully done that in a lot of ways. And so if someone is demonstrating that their allegiance is to the institution, if some doctor is like, oh, no, I'm all about my degree and what I've been told in medical school, and that's all that's truth and everything else is bullshit, and then they, regardless if they're aware of it or not, they're a puppet of that institution, and therefore they are perpetuating the problems that the institution causes, which is, as I mentioned, designed to snuff us out, designed to harvest us, to take that light within and keep it as dim and curated as possible, but harvest every bit of it and then snuff us out when we're inconvenient. That's the system. So I am not going to trust anyone who swears their allegiance to the institution or has no recognition that the institution that they might have signed up for has that as their baseline. Now, I don't need to be wicked or mean to anybody. I don't need to inherently discard someone or whatever. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. I'm not going to trust them with doing anything to my body or putting me in a legal situation if they're swearing their allegiance to the legalese reality. I'm not going to do that, but I can still have a conversation with them, and I can still appeal to that Christic nature that is within them and plant those seeds if the soil is ready, if the soil is ready to receive, trusting that those seeds will grow when they're ready. So that's how I determine which individuals in those institutions that I can trust. I check that first and foremost. Now, if we talked about people who just happen to be doctors, or just happen to be lawyers, but they're good people. To me, that's recognition that the institution that they signed up for is the problem. And so they're acting as sort of infiltrators, as you will, going into those spaces and trying to do what's right, even though their system is designed to do what's wrong. So not all those who have been to medical school and are doctors are bad. There are many who have sworn off, and we saw such a surgence of that in the COVID times, where we had all these doctors who were like, this is absolutely ridiculous what we're doing. This makes no sense from a logical perspective at all. And so that was very eye-opening for them. And some of those people were some of the loudest, most powerful, most beautiful voices to come through in that time. So that can apply to any institution. So I don't paint a brush over just because you're a banker, you're bad. Just because you're a lawyer, you're bad. Just because you're a doctor, you're bad. And I don't even really say people inherently are bad. I mean, there's like 1% of the 1% inherent psychopaths that are sort of, they're on the farthest end away of the Christic spectrum. Inherently, there's not a lot of goodness in people born like that, but it's such a tiny fraction. The vast majority of people are very good at their core, very good at their core. Now they can fall into wicked ways, and we can develop these patterns to, and this character, this persona, this monster that gets created and possesses us, to where we believe I am this doctor, I believe that I am this status, I believe that I am this house, or whatever. And therefore I act in that way, or I act under the ruling of this corporation, this corporation, this dead corpse, is designed to inflict and cause more problems in that way. So people can be trapped by that, but people are inherently good. So that's what I'm always striving for, is seeking that inherent goodness in everyone, and seeing that first and foremost, not falling into the naivety where I let that knowing that everyone is good, where I let that sort of take advantage of me, because there's that happens too. We're here to move through our naivety and not keep our warrior ready at all times, but to offer that trust and that knowing that, like, hey, I know that you're good inside, even if you believe that you're not, or even if you believe that this institution is what all it should be, then I know that's still in there. And if somebody's not ready for that in this time, then that's okay. So yeah, it's challenging to answer this question, because I don't, it really is very specific. It's specific circumstances, specific instances. As far as like how I would interact with the matrix or these institutions, it would only be for specific needs. If I could trust somebody to recognize, hey, this institution is a problem, and I'll help you navigate that because I have more knowledge on the inside, that's great. Like a naturopathic doctor is leaning in that direction. Granted, there are some naturopathic doctors that are still extremely mainstream, but they're leaning in that direction of recognizing that the mainstream allopathic medical system doesn't really work in healing a lot of times. It's great for trauma-related incidents, breaking limbs and life-threatening things that happen immediately. It's good for that kind of stuff, but for the extended health, it's horrible. It's horrible at that. So yeah, but then there's also instances where we, like it's a spiritual war. So knowing that the enemy is this anti-Christic way that has spawned all of these demons and these institutions and corporations and organizations and definitions and all these different things, I still have to navigate this matrix, this shared reality where it's sort of split between these two realms. And there might be times where I need to hire like a mercenary, essentially. Like if you want to look at it from a wartime perspective, you might need to hire a mercenary. So if I need to hire a lawyer to do a specific task in this moment, I'm not necessarily going to trust that lawyer if they don't recognize the institution as the problem on a larger scale. But if I need to do something for a specific purpose, I could do that. Just be cautious going down that road. Be cautious of where we put our trust in that, because attorneys are really supposed to just turn you over to the judge, the master of the ship, because we're on a ship lost at sea and they're pirates. And a lot of them don't really know that, but they still participate in the system in the way that it was designed, and do end up turning us over. And it's all just kind of like who's who knows who kind of thing as well. So just be cautious when you go into that space, just like you would be cautious if you hired mercenaries. Mercenaries have no allegiance to you. They have no alignment towards inherent goodness. They simply are just guns for hire, weapons for hire. So they could turn on you if somebody else paid them more, right? So we have to recognize that if I'm hiring a mercenary to do what I need to do, even if I'm aligned with a well-intentioned, good perspective, a mission that I need to accomplish, even if it's aligned good, if somebody else comes along and offers more money to my mercenary, they're not going to stick with me. I can't trust that. So that gets really tricky when we do that kind of stuff. But sometimes in a pinch, that's what's necessary. So again, it's kind of hard to paint it with a wide brush on like what you do in specific scenarios, or all scenarios, because it's all about specifics and all about what you would do in each and every moment. And I can't go through all of those in this moment, which is why everything comes back to the importance of refining that discernment, growing that connection to God, so that the divine is always leading you to the space of the space higher. It's always guiding us to a higher outcome. And that might be through whatever path, through whatever institution, the whatever can still be used and transmuted by the divine to do whatever it needs to. So yeah, I'll just leave that one there and pass it back and see if anybody else wants to jump in either on that topic or take us any direction. Hey, Roxy, go ahead. Yeah, Roxy, we're not hearing you if you're saying anything.
Hi,
There-
Justin, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
Oh, good. I think what happened was you enabled me to come on and then I was booted out, so I don't know what happened there. But anyway, good to hear your voice, and nice to be here with everyone, with yourself, Darth, Lila, and everyone else that has joined. So I would like to speak about kind of the recent events involving Conor McGregor. So I don't know if you're over that story at all. And I suppose in the week that we've celebrated St. Patrick's Day and how Ireland as a country is being highlighted, I just thought like I would kind of bring a little bit of attention to this story and his plight for Ireland and the Irish people. So he was invited to, and I'd love your take on it, if you have any input at all. So he was invited to the White House on St. Patrick's Day, and he's the only Irish kind of, I suppose, some form of delegate that has been invited over and above any Irish politicians. The only one that had been invited before that was the Irish Prime Minister, but that had been a few days before. So Conor McGregor is just an ordinary guy from Dublin, a mixed martial arts fighter, and has quite a significant following online. and he has dipped in and out of like commenting about any of the issues going on in Ireland. And then that appears to have ramped up over the last couple of months. And then he announces, like on his his channel, that he has been invited to the White House. So he has this audience then with Donald J. Trump. Even before that, he manages to announce from the White House, you know, the press conference, the podium, and kind of highlights the issue about mass migration. So, of course, there's been a big fallout in the country here over all of that, and who is he to speak for the people of Ireland and that kind of thing. And what he's been doing is highlighting the truth. And, you know, he found himself like with having the audience with Donald Trump. He, you know, has had his picture taken with Elon Musk, an audience with Robert Kennedy Jr., and then he's invited to this dinner with the Attorney General of Texas, of all places. And he then writes on his channel, his X channel, that this Attorney General in Texas will now be addressing this issue of, so he's spearheading like a campaign or an investigation into a company that is an American company, and they manufacture puberty blockers. But where the significance of this story is, alongside this story, there was a group of people here that sent an open letter to basically to the White House, addressed to J.D. Vance. And in that open letter, which arrived coincidentally on St. Patrick's Day as well. So kind of all these little dots are beginning to connect up. And so in this letter, they wanted to highlight the again, what is happening, the truth of what is happening in Ireland from like we the people of Ireland point of view, to addressing things like sovereignty and kind of other significant issues. But in among this, they also highlighted this story as well. And where this becomes very interesting is that the Minister of Ireland for Education, her husband is on the board or a senior executive at this particular company that issues and manufactures these puberty blockers. So therefore there's this conflict of interest because she's the Minister for Education, like overseeing the health and wellness of children seemingly. And so, you know, she's kind of seen here as just one of the Irish globalist puppets. And I'm wondering now, like, is there more of a significant story that's happening here, just even to kind of highlight the corruption in the politicians throughout Ireland, bearing in mind that Donald Trump did have the Irish Premier there, and who said very, very little and didn't speak the truth at all, of course. So it just seems as though, you know, that, as I say, the country is really being highlighted. And these two little kind of insignificant stories have now married up on St. Patrick's Day. And yeah, I kind of just wondered if, so sorry, what will happen is then, so there's going to be an investigation into this company where the Minister for Education in Ireland, her husband, you know, is a senior executive here. And therefore, is this the start then of maybe the downfall of some of the Irish politicians, hopefully? And kind of was leading that to something else here. Oh yeah, I just kind of wondered, So sorry, since that, then Conor McGregor then on his X channel has written this like kind of ultimatum, for want of a better word, to the Irish government. And he's highlighted these three things. He's given them 12 days to kind of come up with a plan to show, and it seems as though he has the backing of the White House, to show that they will dismantle the human trafficking racket that has been, quite significant in Ireland. He wants answers of a plan of the mass deportation of criminals, just exactly what has been happening in the States, and also a lockdown on, a tightened border control, exactly the same as what has been happening in the States. The only thing for us is, like, we don't have people like Quest-i-ons, or is it Tom Holman, the border czar, and I suppose my logical brain thinks, well, I don't know how this, I don't know how this happens. But anyway, this is just kind of a story. I just thought it would be nice to come on and speak about this in the week of St. Patrick's and authoring all things Ireland. And, like I was on an Irish chat last night. It's a chat I kind of just dip in and out of because it would be, there'd be a lot of chat and it would be full of a lot of fear as well, as people really believe and see this rolling out. And there was lots of tears of joy because it seems as though he's the only kind of significant man in Ireland that has been able to speak for the people. So I have to highlight as well, he's a very divisive, he has a very divisive role. And so it's a case of, listening to the message as opposed to the messenger, because, many people don't like who he is. I'm not sure if you know who he is or have paid any attention at all to this story. So I just wanted to bring it up and kind of chat about it a little bit. So just wondered if you had any input at all.
Yeah, thanks, Roxy. Thanks for bringing that up. I was not aware of the situation at the White House with Conor McGregor. I do know who Conor McGregor is. He's a UFC fighter. He's got quite a lot of notoriety. And yeah, I mean, in the simplest form, this is just continuing the exposure of how deeply embedded these politicians and government institutions have been at every level in disrupting and destroying us in every way. And so targeting children with that kind of thing is pretty horrific. And so it's helping to highlight that. And the Great Awakening is not just happening in the US, it's happening worldwide, and everyone gets their own flavor because we've all got our own specific levels of corruption that we've allowed to pervade into our space. And it's truly stuff that we've allowed. We don't have anybody else to blame for what's gotten this way. It's through our negligence and through our naivety that we've just sort of allowed this to happen. So Ireland is just getting a dose of that through seeing it. And now whether I mean, maybe Conor McGregor is receiving lines from the White Hats. Maybe he's playing a role in that sense, but I think he's being authentic in this. I think he genuinely feels that way. And the White Hats are just going to use characters like this to drive the narrative forward. So maybe the White Hats knew that was his perspective, and they know he's pretty outspoken and he wouldn't be bashful in what he wanted to say. So why not invite him to the White House and kick that off? It's like, and then as far as like what's happening in Ireland with the politicians and involvement in these various spaces, whether or not that's real or just for show, to show what was happening, I don't know. It doesn't really matter that much, because what it's doing is driving the conversation forward to the public so that they no longer have that blind trust in institutions and governments, that they're just going to do work for our best interest. Because, and Trump's talked about that too, how this is a pretty widespread, like, you have to be pretty crazy to think that men should play in women's sports and that we should be giving drugs to children before their consent or before they're even born, to shift their hormones and all of that. Like, it's pretty fucked up people to think that kind of stuff. So it's few and far between. So the more that narrative gets out there, it's a very polarizing subject, but polarizing in a way that's helping people to lose their trust in the institutions and the governments. And so it's working in that sense. So I would just say it's on par for everything else that's happening. It's just an Irish specific instance, and I'm sure we'll see lots of those in lots of different ways. So yeah, I don't have a whole lot more to add on that, but thanks for bringing it up. And it's good, encouraging to hear other examples of things happening, because every instance is just another bit before that inevitable flood. We're getting the potential energy is building, and it cannot be built forever. So we are one step closer, and that's certainly a big step closer in that regards. So yeah, I'll just pass that back and see if you've got any more thoughts, or if anyone else has anything.
I mean, all I can add really is, yeah, it's happening like in, I suppose, my own country. So it means a lot to me, and it's just been fantastic to. I think there's been a lot of fear around the country for sure, and as I say, I kind of dip in and out of different chats just to hear on X, just to hear kind of, and these are Irish patriots, just to hear how people are feeling, like what they're saying. And of course, you just cannot mention at all the Q team. You just, like, it can hardly even be mentioned, because you would almost be like, blown out of the chat. But because I've heard different people trying to do that, to at least kind of, bring in that idea that, it's all a movie playing out, and yet, many of them haven't wanted to hear that. So, yeah, there's been a lot of fear in the country, and this has just been, I think, like, people have been praying for somebody to step forward, and they kept mentioning, like, like Conor McGregor would just be absolutely ideal. And so I suppose I was beginning to join those little dots as I watched those two side by side stories unfolding and coming together on the same day. And I'm like, as Q would say, like, timing is everything. And it's obviously, it just feels to me like he's been brought on board. Yeah. By, I don't know if it's by the Q team, White Hats, just been brought on board really, and propelled, like, up front and center to tell, I suppose, tell the world really exactly what has been going on. So, and that's what's happening. And he's now led down the gauntlet, to to the Irish government, and they have 12 days, or else their almighty hell will be unleashed. So we shall see. We shall see, and it's just been really fantastic. So anyway, I just wanted to do that.
Yeah, thanks for that. And TikTok, as as Q would say, these like time frames that are given, it's a very effective way to see how the rats scurry. So anyone still propping up this old system, still doing wrong, they get very nervous when timelines are set, and often make moves which expose them, but also yeah, I mean, there's only so much they can do. So yeah, it's all very exciting. Thanks again for sharing that. So I'll just I'll just pass it off and see if anyone else wants to jump in.
Hey.
Go ahead, Lila.
Hey. I just wanted to thank Roxy for sharing your perspective around all of that. Sometimes I feel removed from what's going on in other places, and I really want to know. I really want to hear, especially from the members of our specific community, like what's happening for them in real time. So thank you so much for sharing that. And being of Irish descent, etc. It's just it's lovely to hear the relief in your voice, because I do consider like that my people in so many ways. So yeah, I just wanted to say that and let you know that I think I'm speaking for all of us, that your shares around what's happening there are so important and so received. We're receiving that and really do want to. Feel like it's been a really overwhelming week for Americans, just with what's been going on with the release of the JFK files, etc. And there's a real way that we can get so like hyper focused on that. Yeah, thanks for your voice.
Oh, that is so lovely of you to say, Lila, and I'm so glad that this is kind of, hit Irish Americans. I suppose with March having been announced as, I can't remember what the executive order was, but was it like Irish American Heritage Month or something like that? So, and of course, the significance of the Kennedy files as well. Or like I remember going into my grandparents' home, and there was always like two sets of grandparents, and there was like always a picture of the Pope and a picture of JFK. So, yes, so it's really good to have highlighted, what's going on, especially in our own wee little community here. So, thank you, everyone.
Yeah, I agree, Lila, and thank you for that. And thanks again, Roxy. Yeah, anyone else want to jump in? Got just a little bit of time left, but we can certainly go into another topic if we want.
Yes, I've been getting onto the mic here a lot, if you don't mind. Pardon me. Yes, so as we have, I think in a few of these more recent shows, we've talked about, well, particular animals or things that they produce, like bees, for example. They produce honey, and this shifting of gears has been happening for me, and I'm sure it has already happened for others, and they're more into it than I have been. But when I was getting into plant-based living and veganism, I was so proud and basically patriotic about it, and almost in a way kind of insane, is that it's very easy, like, when you're hit with information as shattering as, what the truth is and what you're really doing when you're consuming animal flesh, or when you are, even if you're just the one shopping for it, you're never even the one who kills the animal or, causes the suffering, but you are contributing to it. It has been a major part of my life in the last, I'm crazy now, almost 13, 14 years. And just in the recent last, about a year, I've been, just opening my ears more to what others have to say. And it's much less toxic to hear the word, at least for my ears to hear, when someone says plant-based instead of vegan, because it's become such a buzzword where a lot of these vegans who claim to be so caring about animals, they knowingly took the vaccine, and how a lot of it, was saline, but had animal products and animals' DNA in it and all this stuff, and they still claim to be such virtuous people. And yet they're also seemed like they were paid off or something to be spreading misinformation about getting the vaccine and wearing a mask and all this stuff. Like, there were things that happened up here in Canada with some groups that I was associated with that were just so not just bizarre, but once enough time went past, I had learned like what's really been going on, and it's cult-like behavior. Really, it's dark. It's not light. And I've been interacting with more individuals who before I was keeping more than an arm's distance away from, let's just put it that way. Had nothing to do with that 6 foot rule, but I just before had no intention of wanting to even interact with people who even had like honey or, wore wool from a sheep when I mean, now that I've settled down a bit and matured quite a lot, is that sheep, they grow their wool so fast, if they're not shaved, they can die from overheating or they can't even move, like they can't graze on their field. And to be a good shepherd is to shave the sheep, and as a reward, you get to like wear their wool, and it's hygienic, it's very good for the winter and lasts forever. And same with things like honey. It's been a preservative used for thousands of years and in medicines and all these other things. So I just wanted to bring this up because I think it's not really discussed all the time. Like it's now kind of surfacing. I've noticed like more people are talking about it. And I want to hear what you have to say about like when you say plant-based, I mean like that's just a better way to present this to people, right? Because I don't ever like putting a bunch of work into something like what I did before. I think a lot of us have done this, is we, project the vegan energy or, it's like this bad vibe basically. It's like, oh, it's like the vegans here. And, they're just going to preach to us. And I don't ever like being that individual without meaning to. I found myself doing that and it just drove me nuts. And so I know you, Justin, you've mentioned how you have honey and like other things. And now that I've finally gotten around to this is the subject of eggs because, there's a lot of, I guess you could say, things around it that I think is just misunderstood. And a lot of people just call them, chicken abortions. Like it sounds gross, but it's like, I mean, because I don't eat eggs. Like that's the thing is I'm asking about this because there's people, if you know them, like a local beekeeper, they don't do these crazy messed up practices that abuse the animal. And I've looked at some research about the colors of yolks when you're buying from this supplier or this other one, where the more golden, um, it's like the closer the color it is to the sun, the chicken was a much more loved and cared for being, and it was never tortured. It actually was free range, but then as the colors degraded to a much more like kind of lighter yellow, or just a very void kind of whitewashed appearance, that is a telltale sign of like an animal that's been abused. Or it was a, I wish I saved it. It was, yeah, like comparing a farmer's chicken egg to a quote unquote free range egg compared to a store bought egg. And when I saw that, I was like, this makes a lot of sense. This is resonating with the whole thing about sheep and wool and bees and honey. And there's definitely other animal products out there that I must not know about because this keeps coming up and I don't even go to look for it and it seems to find me. So yeah, I would love it if you could elaborate maybe more on that because as we keep learning, we just keep learning and I'm open to hearing. So thanks, man.
Yeah, good question. And I agree with you. I don't particularly like the term vegan just because there's so much weight carried with it. And unfortunately, it's that weight has gotten there due to militant veganism of people sort of using that as a platform to beat down and judge and shame others. And it's such an ineffective way of spreading a message, and it doesn't work in the long term. Even if somebody is shamed into changing their ways of being for a moment, it's temporary because they're not actually doing it for any reason other than just to stop the punishment. So if we act as this militant vegan to punish others and say that you're fucked up and you're going to hell and all this other kind of stuff, and they make a switch from that, but it's not true, genuine from the heart, it's short term. It's not really going to settle in, and it's not spiritually integrating in that sense. So yeah, I've shifted in a lot of ways around that topic. And yes, I much prefer using the term plant-based because there's not a lot of weight to it, not as much weight to it. Really, I don't even really like having to use any term at all. It's like I eat what I feel called to, and that happens to be, because I've discovered that I don't need to be torturing any creature in order to live and do quite well. And I actually do much better when I don't do those things, when I don't consume those things. So that's what I've found through the simple observational standpoint of, this is what happens when I put this into my body, and this is what happens, this is what happened otherwise. So it's much simpler that way, but harder to describe, especially when we live in a society that's all about labels and words to describe things, and you've got to have fit in this box and whatever else. And I don't really like being put in a box, but we have to navigate that to some degree in order to communicate with language, which is a sort of rudimentary step down way of communicating in general, but that's where we are. And so that's what we work with. So as far as like the various other forms, so vegetarianism versus veganism, staying away from animal products entirely, and the vegetarianism, I received from, some of y'all might remember from way back, we did shows with Remembrancer. Great guy. I haven't heard from him in a while, but I hope he's doing well. I heard from him, and he got, this was years ago at this point, but he gave me, I think what he described as the Essenes 10 Commandments. So the 10 Commandments, but in a slightly varied form. And reading through them, they made a lot of sense to me. And essentially, when it talked about food, it was very clear about thou shalt not kill, and eating flesh of another creature is wrong, because no creature out there is willingly giving itself to be harvested like that. That just doesn't happen. But you bring up the points of eggs and milk and wool and all of that. So what this defined is that in the lower realms, so kind of as we're ascending through and we're moving from eating the maybe denser, maybe root vegetables, cooked things. Even if we're plant-based, we're moving up that scale, but we're still eating like cooked foods, more dense things. And then as we elevate, we start consuming lighter and lighter, and fruit being a very light form of physical food. And then the lightness goes beyond physical food entirely to where it's not necessarily as much of a requirement that we need this for energy or sustenance, but it takes time to get there. This is not something that we just do overnight. So it described how consuming eggs and milk and things was not inherently wrong, as long as there was no torture to the creature. But it did say, in order to move past that, those are things that need to be let. Those, I read this so long ago that I don't remember the exact wording, but it was essentially saying we have to let those go in order to continue elevating, in order to move past that. Like, those are very dense forms of physical food. So I happen to agree with that completely. But it gets tricky because oftentimes we buy things from a store and we don't have any clue, and we have no relation to the animal that it comes from. So if I can't guarantee that what I'm consuming hasn't been done through torture, I try and avoid it. Honey is something that I will do, though I try and keep it to as best sourced as possible, and I don't really use it that much. Like I'll occasionally use it, but I don't really use it that often. That's really the only animal product that I consume. I don't do any dairy because I can't. I don't know any people with cows that would give me milk, and I don't even really think I would go for it at this point either. I just don't feel a real draw to it. But I would consider it if I knew those things, but I don't, so I don't really consider it. And same thing with eggs. If I don't eat eggs, I haven't eaten eggs in years, and I don't really plan to either. Just what I know about the eggs is not really designed for our body. I think in a pinch we can find we can find some aid from using animal products in certain instances. And as long as that harm isn't imbued into the food itself, then it could potentially have some medicinal benefit for a time. But it is something that I feel would be let go of eventually, because it is a more denser sort of element to mix with. So yeah, that's and then as far as wool goes, I don't. Wool is typically a much safer. I mean, the wool industry, of course, has its bad practices, but it's much less likely to be putting the animals in the horrific conditions, at least as far as what I've seen. I could be wrong about that. I don't really buy wool willy-nilly. It's funny, but it's also something that, as you described, it's not like this is it can be a harmonious relationship with the bees. It can be a harmonious relationship providing with the cows, with the chickens. It can be harmonious in that you're providing protection, you're providing sustenance, whatever for them, and in return they're offering their gifts in some way or another. So yeah, as far as karmically, there's nothing wrong with that. It might not be designed for us to consume, and even what we're designed to consume can kind of change based on where we are. Like some people are not designed, or some people have gotten to a state where that they could not have that enter their body without extreme consequences, and some people are much more capable of handling that. So it just depends. It depends on where you are and what you're aligned to, and everyone's kind of pathway through that is a little different. So that's where, again, I have issue with this whole militant veganism thing, and throwing it in people's faces in that way, because it's counterproductive. Even my goal, of course, is to reduce the suffering across the entire earth, animals included. I want that. But if I sit there and judge somebody or shame somebody for their choices and what they're doing, not only are they going to move further from that, well, they might make that decision because they don't want me to shame them any longer, but then that's not really like going to stick in the long term, and it might introduce some consequences within their spiritual development. Or they might go further away from me in that concept because I'm an asshole and just treating some people with shame. That doesn't work. Shame is one of the darkest forms of magic in this space, and it's nothing that I ever want to entertain using, especially not consciously. So any way that I can recognize where shame is being cast, I'm going to, that's not my game. So so I'll just leave that one there, and I'll pass it back.
That was really pleasant to listen to, man. Yeah, I think we're on the exact same page where it's like, well, I personally, I don't think I'm at that level where if I consume any of these products, it would be like a massive effect on my health. And well, that's where it's about this balance of living a good life. Is that I think, man, this is such a tricky one. Where let's say you are an individual who has made it to the fruitarian level, and you've actually practiced some of the breatharian stuff. We're getting up there here, but where like you can't even find yourself able to interact with a lot of people. Like it is energetic. It gets to a point where you don't even have to say anything. You don't even have the condescending, uh, like, oh, shaming on this person because they do this or don't do that. It's just that you actually just put yourself into a position where, I mean, you're all one. So like you're never alone. You're always with God. However, you can't socialize. You can't enjoy the human life that you have been given. And I'm not trying to speak for anyone who's actually done this, because I haven't made it to this point myself and can't speak from experience. However, I feel like there's some things that it's like, well, we're going to have to choose if we want to go that high. And it's almost like, it's kind of similar to, imagine if you were to take a entheogen, pardon me, like a mushroom or acid or something, where you get so high that you're actually in a timeless place. And it's kind of hard to describe this to others who, like, I'm not sure if they've experienced this themselves, but when you take these things, you go into infinity. Like you can actually get stuck there. And it's not a pleasant space to be in. And I feel like when we get up to this fruitarian level or breatharian level, we basically become these spiritual hermits where, I mean, now we're not helping anybody. And we've actually, it's like beating the game, like beating a video game where you've talked to every character and done every side quest and you've done all the things to like become the max level. And now here you are, and I mean, you're just bored. And not just bored, you're not actually doing anything productive anymore. And that's what I always like to be as much as I can. It's productive and being on a mission that is productive and protects humans and animals. Uh, and of course, everything in between. So it's, man, it brings me back to this whole thing about like what's the point of doing all kinds of things? But that's where I'm overthinking again. And so it's an interesting balance. I feel like a lot of us have been on this train of thought before, maybe not word for word the way I just said it, but yeah, it's difficult to socialize with others when you put yourself onto such a pedestal, and then you get all, you know, you guilt people for doing things or not doing things, and it eliminates the purpose. So yeah, I'm just starting to kind of not sound like I'm venting, but I'm not sure where I'm going with this at this point. I'm just learning. So yeah, I'll free up the mic. I know the show is ending soon, so thanks, Justin. I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, you're welcome. Appreciate you too. And it's yeah, it's always a balance, right? And this path is straight and narrow. It is naturally refining. So if we are doing this, not saying you are at all, but if we're doing this for mass popularity or any of that, then we're following the wrong path, because naturally it will refine and people won't be able to do that. But the effectiveness of embodying that Christ in the best way possible is, while still following the path, refining oneself down this narrow, straight way, maintaining connection to all around, knowing that there is no separation. So any perceived distance I get from spiritual development can also accentuate my sense of separation, or it can enhance my connection. And so if I'm walking that path and establishing connections and making sure that I'm, I don't need to be trying to reach all forms and all people, but just having that ability to connect and relate with where somebody is coming from, so that I'm not just looking down my nose at somebody because they choose to eat meat, or any which way that we can fall into that judgment because we've decided, or we've grown away from that. It doesn't feel good when somebody does the same to us. So that's where the golden rule is. So it stands, you love the Lord God with all your heart and all your might, because you are that. So love God with everything, because you are that, and all is that, and everyone else is that. And then do unto others as you'd have them done unto you, because you're God and so are they. So why would we hurt anybody? Why would we judge somebody? Why would we cast shame, dark? Why would we cast that at somebody else, inflict pain or harm? It just doesn't make any sense when you truly step into your true Christic self. So that's the way. And I did find those 10 commandments that he sent me. So I'm just going to read those off because I think they're interesting to consider. I don't know the validity of them, but they make a lot of sense to me. So the 10 commandments of the Nazarene Book of Moses. It says, "Hear me, O Israel, if you would have joy in your life and abundant blessings rather than pain and misery, keep these commandments. Within the one, Yahweh is both God and Goddess. Wherefore, worship both the Father God and the Mother Goddess, that you be centered in the all." Number 2, within the creation is a spark of the Creator. Wherefore, know yourself. Number 3, within every creature is a spark of the Creator. Wherefore, respect all living things in the manner that you respect yourself. Number 4, Yahweh desires that all creatures live in nonviolent cooperation. Wherefore walk softly on Mother Earth, seek nonviolence, and make no laws that conflict with the way of Yahweh. 5, Yahweh does not sanction violent warfare. Wherefore any religion, scripture, or prophet that declares otherwise either lies or is in ignorance and should not be obeyed. 6, you shall not kill any creature for pleasure, nor for profit, nor for food. 7, you may eat the milk and eggs of animals that are well cared for, but know this, these foods are for this world only. For in the lower heavens the cherubim eat but fruit, and in the higher heavens they eat only heavenly essences. Number 8, you shall cultivate honesty within yourself and in every relationship. Number 9, you shall forgive yourself when you stumble, and likewise forgive others their shortcomings. 10, love Yahweh within and around you, and love every creature as yourself. For lo, love is the way, the truth, and the life, and none find Yahweh except by love. So I'll post those in JC Family if anyone's curious. Again, I don't have any research into where those came from, but from a just purely they make a lot of sense and they fit. So I am good with those. So yeah, that's a great way to end the show today. And well, I'll just see. We can run over a little bit today. Does anyone have anything they want to talk about on that particular subject before we wrap up today, or just give any closing comments in general? All right, great. So before we end today, I do want to share screen and go over the songs that I'm going to play us out with. So 2 more Mumford and Sons songs, and even in the name Mumford. So ford. What's a ford? It's a crossing. You ford the river, and so So the crossing to the mother and sons. So we are the mother sons, the free Masons. They're freeing the mother sons. So he's very much Freemasons. And yeah, they're singing these Christic songs every which way that they can. And they do so beautifully. So I'm going to share the 2 songs we're going to play us out with. The first one being Dust Bowl Dance. So the 2 songs I'm going to play, the first 2 were from the album Sigh No More, which is their first and my favorite album. They have a lot of great stuff, but that's my favorite for sure. And these are the 2 last songs from that album. So the first song that I played was the first song, and then the Roll Away Your Stone, I think, was like 3rd or 4th song. But this is the second to last, and then the last song. So kind of the album runs in a way to kind of tell a story. So this song, Dust Bowl Dance. The young man stands on the edge of his porch. The days were short and the father was gone. There was no one in the town and no one in the field. The dusty barren land had given all it could yield. So we are seeing the fallen state of the world, what it's gotten to, because the father was gone. The days were short. The son is not here very much. So the days were short. The father was gone. There was no one in the town, no one in the field. So I've been kicked off my land at the age of 16, and I have no idea where else my heart could have been. I placed all my trust at the foot of this hill, and now I'm sure my heart can never be still. So this is like the prodigal son stepping out on the journey. I've been kicked off my land at the age of 16. Or it could be somebody stepping into their Christic self and being removed from their place of origin. That's not accepting an anti-Christic origin, perhaps. I placed all my trust at the foot of this hill, and now I'm sure my heart can never be still. So collect your courage and collect your horse, and pray you never feel this same kind of remorse of us stepping away, of us falling away from home, stepping out, perhaps. And it says, seal my heart and break my pride. I've nowhere to stand and now nowhere to hide. Align my heart, my body, my mind to face what I've done and do my time. So this is like taking responsibility and entering that catastrophe, that rock bottom moment. Seal my heart and break my pride. So to step back into humility. I have nowhere to stand and now nowhere to hide. I have nothing to look at but myself. And this is where we start to align my heart, my body, my mind to face what I've done and do my time. So the atonement, the at one minds, to come back to the one. While you are my accuser, now look in my face. Your oppression reeks of your greed and disgrace. So one man has and another has not. How can you love what it is you have got? So maybe this is looking at the cabal system and this fallen state, and you're my accuser, so accusing me of maybe stepping away from the insanity, perhaps. Your oppression reeks of your greed and disgrace. So one man has and another has not. How can you love what it is you have got? So how, asking these questions to the satanic system, how can you do this? When you took it all from the weak hands of the poor, liars and thieves, you know not what is in store. There will come a time I will look in your eye. You will pray to the God that you've always denied. So these people that deny God, they'll come back to that when I return, when the Christ returns. Liars and thieves, you know not what is in store. There will come a time I will look you in your eye. You will pray to the God that you've always denied. Then I'll go out back and I'll get my gun. I'll say, you haven't met me. I am the only son. So again, alluding to this Christic essence rising within, and this warrior-like state that we have to initially enter in order to right the ship, in order to sweep away the evil. So setting out for war to restore righteousness. And then it repeats, seal my heart and break my pride. I have nowhere to stand and I'll nowhere to hide. Align my heart, my body, my mind to face what I've done and do my time. As I face myself, we have no one else to blame. So we face ourselves. We are the ones who built all this and allowed all of this. So we face what I've done, and that's how we allow the Christ back into the space. Well, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, it was me. I know what I've done because I know what I've seen. I went out back and I got my gun. I said, you haven't met me. I am the only son. So again, that Christ essence returning, and it's making sure it's clear that it was me. So it's like singing from two different perspectives almost, but it's the same, because we are all of that. We are the darkness that allowed this, and we are the light to return, the return of the King. So yeah, that's Dust Bowl Dance, which we'll play. And then the last song is called After the Storm. So, and after the storm, I run and run as the rains come, and I look up on my knees, and out of luck, I look up. So returning our gaze back to God. Night has always pushed up day. You must know life to see decay. But I won't rot, not this mind and not this heart. I won't rot. So I'm not going to let the death cult win. I'm not going to let that take over. Night has always pushed up day, saying that night, at least in recent, has been dominant. So that's shifting. But we make that bold declaration, I won't rot. I'm not aligning with the death. And I took you by the hand, and we stood tall and remembered our own land, what we lived for, declaring ourselves for life, what we lived for. And there will come a time you'll see with no more tears, and love will not break your heart. but dismiss your fears. Get over your hill and see what you find there, with grace in your heart and flowers in your hair. So keeping our eyes forward, knowing that this is temporary, this will pass, and there will come a time when, with no more tears, and love, this concept of love isn't about breaking your heart, but it dismisses your fears. Get over your hill, overcome your own limitations, and see what you find there, with grace in your heart and flowers in your hair. And now I cling to what I knew. I saw exactly what was true, but oh, no more. That's why I hold. That's why I hold with all I have. That's why I hold. So hold on. I'm coming. Hold strong. We know that this will pass. We have to weather this storm to get to the after the storm. And I won't die alone and be left there. Well, I guess I'll just go home. Oh, God knows where, because death is just so full and man so small. Well, I'm scared of what's behind and what's before. So sort of just the process itself can be quite intimidating to go through this death experience, so that we could be reborn, step into the truly living. So I think that's just sort of the inner conflict that can be seen there. And there will come a time, so it repeats. There will come a time, no more tears. Love won't break your heart, but dismiss your fears. Get over your hill and see what you find there, with grace in your heart and flowers in your hair. Yeah, very poetic, beautiful lyrics, and the songs are excellent as well. So yeah, thanks again for being here today. Appreciate y'all's time and attention and input and listening and all the good stuff. So always appreciate it. And we'll play out these songs. And as I mentioned, I'm going to be taking, most likely taking some time off next week from shows. So everything will be up in the air. I don't know how long that will be, but we'll see. So just stay tuned. So, I love you all so very much. Thanks again. Have a wonderful day wherever you are, and enjoy these glorious tunes. Take care.